Chapter 879. This was a completely different world. Every time he traveled in the sorcerer world, this strong feeling gave Grimm a different feeling. On Earth, the source of photosynthesis energy came from the sun. Hence, the climate, environment, temperature difference, humidity, all these factors had different levels and transitions. However, in this strange high magic world, the growth of all living things and the topography were affected by the flow of magic aura, displaying all kinds of strange and treacherous features. Generally speaking, due to the influence of the high magic environment, the plants and animals here were abnormally tall and strong. Tall plants that were more than 100 meters tall could be found everywhere, and many of them showed signs of turning into magic. As for the animals, they were even more ferocious and terrifying, opening one's eyes. Even some of the little white rabbits that people on Earth loved in the past could evolve into carnivorous magical creatures. When they became fierce, they were even more terrifying than the wild wolves on Earth. Although in such a high magic environment, humans evolved to be stronger than their counterparts on Earth, running faster, enduring longer, and having more developed muscles, they were still at a serious disadvantage when compared to wild magical creatures. If it were not for the fact that some of the strongest humans had surpassed the limits of their bodies and minds, and grasped some extraordinary powers, humans would never have been able to become the rulers of the plane. As for the environment that humans lived in, due to the abnormal flow and gathering of magic aura, there were also strange traces left on the vast land. The vast and boundless dark forest, the magic swamp with a heavy and damp fog, the vast desert that covered the sky, the desolate and dilapidated wilderness, the towering and steep mountains, and the kingdom of ice and snow covered in pure white snow, the sorcerer continent below the airship was like a large and small magical continent. Looking from afar, one could always find some strange places in the remote mountains and swamp. The climate and environment of these places were obviously incompatible with the surrounding areas. They were like magic pearls that had been sprinkled on the sorcerer continent, causing people to sigh in amazement. Most of these places were due to the special structure of the terrain, which caused the abnormal gathering of magic aura. Later, after a great effort by the sorcerers, they were turned into resource points that were conducive to the growth of magical plants and animals. From then on, the sorcerers had a stable and long-term source of large amounts of sorcerer resources. To put it bluntly, the stable and robust growth of the sorcerer community was closely related to the development and utilization of a large number of resource points. Therefore, when the airship flew high above the clouds and had a panoramic view of the mountains and rivers within hundreds of miles, a peculiar feeling slowly grew in the bottom of his heart. Under the clouds, the terrain of the continent stretched out. Tall and undulating mountain ranges could be found everywhere. Some of them extended for tens of thousands of kilometers, while others were rugged and precipitous, with dangerous peaks standing in great numbers. Human villages, towns, and cities of various sizes were scattered in the sky. In addition to the lakes and rivers that were scattered all over the place, it reflected an extremely perfect human world. However, this extremely perfect human world was actually controlled by many big and small sorcerer organizations or forces. In the sorcerer world, due to the existence of large areas of undeveloped primitive lands and vast dark forests, if a country established by humans lacked the protection of a powerful sorcerer, it would be almost impossible to resist the invasion of powerful magical beasts, barbaric races, and mutated creatures. Therefore, there were almost no pure human countries. Most of the people in power in the city-state system would choose to attach themselves to a powerful sorcerer organization, using annual offerings in exchange for a guarantee of safety. The two complemented each other and blended into one. Therefore, the true owners of this seemingly peaceful and beautiful land were not the ordinary humans who worked hard on it, but the enormous sorcerer community that occupied the peak of the human world. Originally, with the difficulty of advancing as a sorcerer, this peak should belong to a small group of people who grasped ultimate power. However, due to the earth-shattering increase in the lifespan of sorcerers compared to humans, with the accumulation of tens of thousands of years, this small group of people had astonishingly become an extremely large community. If these fellows were still gathered in the sorcerer world, with the size of the sorcerer continent, it would be very difficult for it to support such a huge demand. Therefore, out of consideration for the long-term development of the sorcerer world, these top-notch sorcerers either voluntarily or under compulsion left their homes and rushed to the outer realm, creating an alternative world in the depths of the void plane. To put it bluntly, those who remained in the sorcerer world were only the seeds of the sorcerer faction. Every 100 years, the sorcerer world would send a certain amount of fresh blood to the sorcerer faction in the outer realm, using this method to continue the entire sorcerer civilization. He slowly closed the book in his hand. Grimm closed his eyes and silently thought about his understanding of the sorcerer civilization. Although he did not know much about the secrets of the ancient sorcerers, it did not prevent him from observing and thinking about the development of the entire sorcerer civilization from the perspective of a third party. This was also a way for high-grade sorcerers to understand themselves and the world. Without a grasp of the mainstream of the development of the plane world and the will of the plane world, it was simply wishful thinking for high-grade sorcerers to want to break through the boundaries of the plane and grasp the power of a higher order. Take Grimm for example. Since he had chosen to specialize in fire, he could only do his best to grasp the law of fire. To achieve this goal, there were two ways to choose. The first was to continuously polish his compatibility with the law of fire through years of analysis and practice, using the accumulation of time and experience to break through the threshold of laws. To be honest, most creatures in the fire elemental plane used this method to advance. However, this method had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that once he broke through the threshold of laws, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds, and he would quickly become a member of the law-defying sorcerers. The disadvantage was that it took a long time for him to break through the threshold of laws. Those who were not elemental creatures who had no concept of time would find it difficult to endure the long and painful period of training. Although Grimm's life had been greatly extended, he still could not reach the near-immortal state of elemental creatures. Therefore, the method of leveling up for elemental creatures was not suitable for him. The second method was to use external objects to shorten the experience and analysis process, thus completing the necessary accumulation of the law of fire. According to Grimm's knowledge, most high-grade sorcerers actively participated in plane expeditions. On one hand, it was for the development of the sorcerer faction, and on the other hand, it was to obtain the extremely precious plane origin. The plane source was actually the materialization of the plane laws of a plane world. These planar laws were originally nothingness and direction. They were born from the planar world's origin consciousness, and then weaved into a huge net of nothingness that enveloped the entire planar world, including all the matter and life within the planar world. Under normal circumstances, all matter and life within a plane would follow the laws of the plane. They would be born, sprouted, grew, strengthened, aged, and died in an orderly fashion. Even though every rock, every piece of soil, every life, and every soul had their own uniqueness and would play out different scenes of life. However, behind the real world, there was still a large net that did not let through, secretly controlling everything. And this net was the all-encompassing, 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 and all-encompassing plane laws. However, this was only under normal circumstances. At certain times, under certain abnormal circumstances, the net of laws of the plane world would also become unstable, and strange phenomena would occur. These abnormal circumstances could easily lead to the abnormal deaths of millions of life within the plane world, which would then lead to the loss and damage of the net of laws. Once the power of laws that had drifted out combined with some matter within the plane, it would form an origin substance. This so-called origin substance was actually a strange substance that was imbued with the laws of the plane. If one could obtain this origin substance and use special methods to extract the power of the laws of the plane that was imbued within, it would undoubtedly help Magi comprehend the laws of the plane with twice the effort. If a high-grade magus did not want to live to the end of his life without truly comprehending the laws of the plane, finding this origin substance was undoubtedly a feasible shortcut. Of course, this kind of origin substance was extremely rare within a realm. However, in those planes that had been trampled upon, due to the invasion of other races and the trembling of the plane's origin, the chances of the net of laws breaking and producing origin substance would increase greatly. There were even some radical magi who would deliberately destroy the stability of the laws of the plane they were invading to facilitate the birth of the origin substance. As for the large number of deaths or extinctions that would occur in the process, Magi were definitely not concerned about it. The reason why the Magi community was classified as an evil faction was probably related to these cruel and terrifying actions. Based on what Grimm had seen and heard in the spiritual illusion, all items that had the word origin substance attached to them were considered a rank 4 magus resource. Magi below rank 4 simply did not have the wealth or strength to touch them. As for their prices, they were all so high that it made one's skin crawl. Although he had the help of the AI chip, which could shorten the time needed to comprehend the laws of fire by 100-fold, it would still be impossible to succeed without over 1,000 years of accumulation. Hence, if he was lucky enough to advance to rank 4, he would probably have to embark on the bumpy road of searching for fire elemental origin substances. After simply imagining his future, Grimm adjusted his posture on the recliner, allowing the warm and gentle sunlight to shine on his body. His body was filled with a feeling of contentment and laziness. The days of fighting and killing had caused his mind to be in a constant state of tension. Chapter 880. Tixter Region. Ouz City. According to the agreement, Grimm got off the airship at Ouz City, which was the closest public wizard city to Molten City. There was no sign of the old magus and the two young magi on the flying ship. It was possible that they had disembarked while Grimm was meditating. Grimm scanned the airship with his immense power of the will, and he could see everything that was happening inside. Even those magi who did not activate their defensive force fields would not be able to escape his all-pervasive spiritual senses. Ordinary Grade 1 wizards knew nothing about his mental perception. Only Grade 2 wizards with sharp mental perception could vaguely sense that something was wrong, but they could not pinpoint the source of the power of the will. The supervising wizard in charge of the airship might have sensed something, but he was afraid of the might of a Tier 3 wizard. As long as Grimm didn't do anything overboard, he wouldn't dare to do anything. Along the gangplank, Grimm slowly got off the airship along with the crowd. A majestic wizard city appeared in front of him. The scattered towers in the center of the continent were made up of 31 different regions. The smaller ones were 700,000 to 800,000 square kilometers, while the bigger ones were a few million square kilometers. They were vast, rich in resources, and had a population of more than 60% of the entire wizard continent. Under such circumstances, almost every region was a brand new world. Although the rulers of these regions were still humans, they were vastly different from other regions in terms of race, skin color, language, and culture. However, under the rule and management of the wizards, the wizard language, which was based on the Scient language, became the official language of the entire continent. Ordinary people naturally did not have the qualifications and energy to learn this strange language. Only the nobles could learn the wizard language from a young age, and raise their children to be outstanding talents immersed in the wizard civilization. Of course, if a child from an ordinary family was found to have the talent to become a wizard, the family would immediately change. The local nobles would fight to sponsor the child to go to a wizard tower or a wizard academy to study. If the other party was lucky enough to become a high and mighty wizard, as long as they returned a little goodwill, it would be a great opportunity for the local nobles to rise. It was precisely because of the existence of such a situation that when a talented sorcerer apprentice appeared in a certain place, the local nobles, big or small, would not hesitate to start a bloody war just to get this sorcerer apprentice into their hands. Those powerful and influential nobles would send their children to the Wizard Academy when they were still young. If he had the talent, he would stay there to further his studies. If he didn't have the talent to become a wizard, he would try his best to make friends with apprentices and find suitable targets for his family to invest in. The high and mighty magi community and the large aristocratic system were closely combined, forming a unique landscape in each region. As soon as Grimm got off the airship, a luxurious silver carriage stopped in front of him. A Tier 2 sorcerer wearing a black robe stepped out of the car. On his chest was a magnificent badge with red patterns on a black background. Looking at the emblem, it was the emblem of Molten Fire City that had invited him here. "You must be Lord Flame? Lord Kirak has already instructed me to wait for you here for 3 days. If you don't have any other matters, Lord Kirak hopes that you can reach Molten Fire City as soon as possible." Grimm raised his head and glanced at OS City not far away. He could only regretfully bid farewell to the other party in his heart. "I don't have any other matters. Let's go." As the two of them boarded the silver carriage, the wheels squeaked as it drove out of the airship docking area. It turned into a gray carriageway and galloped towards a certain direction in the northeast under the escort of a team of 100 exotic beast cavalrymen. Grimm quickly scanned the group of exotic beast riders before getting on the carriage. With his all-pervasive spiritual force scanning, the basic data of the other party quickly appeared in his mind. Lizard Cavalry, a modified exotic beast unit. Their overall strength was mid-grade 1. They were made up of cave lizards and human knights. These lizard cavalry were thin and weak. Although they were protected by exquisite chain armor, it was not suitable for a swift and violent charge on land. However, the cave lizards they were riding on had pads on their feet that could form tiny suction cups. Not only could they land soundlessly, but they could also climb over most obstacles. They were especially suitable for running in narrow and rugged areas. These lizard cavalry were holding specially made spears with sharp teeth. The handles were only 3 feet long, but the spear blades were 6 feet long. The spear blades were covered with barbs, and there was a foot-long blood groove at the tip, faintly flashing with a cold blue light. Whether it was the knights' chain armor or the weapons in their hands, they were obviously enchanted weapons. Even wizards would not be able to use them. From their uniform armor and weapons, it could be seen that this Molten Fire City had quite a bit of influence in the area. Otherwise, it would be difficult to support such a large-scale modification of exotic beasts. As for the Grade 2 wizard who was in charge of welcoming them, not only did he not show any stiff or sluggish expression when facing Grimm, a Grade 3 wizard, up close, he even conversed with him in a very good manner. Through his introduction, Grimm gained a deeper understanding of this strange wizard organization called Molten Fire City. The headquarters of Molten Fire City was located in a huge chain of volcanoes in the northeast of the Tixtet region. Like the Crimson family, it was a large force that ruled over almost the entire Tixtet region. The city lord of Molten Fire City was a Grade 4 wizard, and he had 3 deputy city lords with Grade 3 strength. As for the contract wizards and hired wizards who made a living in Molten Fire City, there were more than 200 to 300 of them. In terms of scale, this organization called Molten Fire City was far superior to the Crimson family. The Tixtet region they ruled over was considered one of the larger regions in terms of area and resources, even in the Scattered Towers forest. As for the Alobes region occupied by the Crimson family, it was a small region at the edge of the Scattered Towers forest. It could not be compared to the mature Tixtet region in all aspects. With such a clear understanding, Grimm could not help but sigh in his heart. In the past wizard wars, the few forces that the Crimson family had devoured were all small forces. Even the Kamara family could barely be considered a medium force. Indeed, Grim was proud of himself for defeating such an opponent. However, as soon as he stepped out of his family's territory, the huge gap between him and the other veteran forces made him feel a sense of crisis. The Crimson family still had to work hard to develop Molten Fire City. After 5 days of continuous travel, Grim and his group finally arrived at the edge of the huge chain of volcanoes. Normal carriages were unable to pass through here, so the Grade 2 Magus invited Grim to ride on his cave lizard and entered a semi-man-made underground cave. Compared to the dark crypt that Grim had been to before, this place was obviously more developed. Although there were caves of various sizes along the way, and the stalagmites and pillars that hindered the way had been destroyed or removed, the rugged and uneven terrain still made it difficult for normal people to pass through. Only the cave lizards, which were native creatures, could rely on their strange instincts to pass through here without any problems. In some particularly rugged areas, the cave lizards could even run along the walls or ceilings. This was one of the main reasons why Molten Fire City had tamed and modified the cave lizards on a large scale. From the moment they entered the underground cave, Grim could feel the rapid rise in temperature. Through the cracks and valleys that were everywhere, Grim could even smell the pungent smell of sulfuric flames. However, as a fire wizard, Grim did not feel the slightest bit of disgust towards the harsh environment. Instead, he felt an instinctive sense of joy and excitement. The originally dark underground had been modified by Molten Fire City. They had installed many fluorescent stones along the way, causing the entire cave to be illuminated in a dark red. There were almost no signs of subterranean creatures. This was understandable. Since this path was the main entrance to Molten Fire City, they would naturally send magi or acolytes to deal with the subterranean creatures that accidentally entered. As long as they did not allow the subterranean creatures to set up their nests, there would be no signs of large-scale subterranean creatures nearby. After traversing through this winding and bumpy underground passage for 2 days, Grim and the rest finally arrived at Molten Fire City. Of course, Molten Fire City had also set up 4 to 5 small strongholds along the way. Looking at the number of people resting there, it was no less than an ordinary human village on the surface. Along the way, Grim and his party had encountered more than 30 or 40 caravans. Wooden chests and parcels of various sizes were filled with Molten Fire City's local products. The contents included animal furs, herbs, strange ores, and large amounts of metals. It was a pity that there was no Kellis or that Grim needed. Grim was not surprised by this at all. The value of Kellis ore obviously exceeded that of ordinary magic gems. Even if they needed to be transported out to be sold, Molten Fire City would not hire such a simple group to do it. Therefore, the caravans that he saw were only buying and selling secondary derivatives produced from the excavation of underground mineral veins. The truly valuable eternal gold and Kellis ore were definitely in the hands of Molten Fire City, while the trash that came with it became delicious cakes that the nearby human organizations fought over. Chapter 881. In fact, Molten Fire City was a huge underground city that was opened up in the belly of a volcano. The core building of the city was, of course, a powerful wizard tower. But unlike the others, this wizard's pagoda was not built on a stable volcanic rock. Instead, it was built on a region of flowing lava. The wizard's tower would only be revealed at a fixed time every year as the sea of lava receded. For the rest of the time, the wizard tower was hidden in a tumbling sea of hot lava, and the traffic inside and outside was cut off. The wizard's tower became the secluded residence of the Level 4 Master of Molten City. As for the other wizards of Molten City, including a few deputy city masters, they all lived in the underground tunnels around the wizard's tower. The volcanoes that rose and fell continuously, the winding and complicated underground maze, and the numerous modified shaman beasts caused this underground world to seem to not be desolate, and the aura of life could be sensed everywhere. The entire Molten City was divided into 3 levels. The inner core was the wizard district. Due to the high concentration and activity of fire elements, normal humans could not survive here for long. Therefore, only wizards could enter and live here normally. The outer core was the apprentice district. Thanks to the isolation of the energy barrier, the energy radiation here was much lower than in the core area. That was why most of the apprentices lived here. Whether it was for research or daily activities, the main activity area of the wizard apprentices was around the outer ring of the core area. On the outskirts of the apprentice area, there were some small living areas that were similar to villages or supply points. There were many ordinary people who provided various services to the apprentices. There was no lack of taverns, inns, mercenary camps, underground black markets, and other special places. The waitresses in the taverns often sold sex on the side. However, these outposts provided a large number of fearless miners for Molten City. One of the main reasons why the level 4 wizard had chosen to build the wizard's pagoda here was because there was a large metal vein deep within the volcano. The magical metals stored in the vein were of excellent quality, and the amount was astonishing. It became the biggest source of income for the Molten City. The mineral deposits required a large amount of manpower to excavate them. That was why Molten City had spared no effort to build a massive underground city here, all for the astonishing reserves of magical metal veins beneath their feet. Every day, thousands of miners of various races worked hard in the complex underground mines, fighting for the strength of Molten Fire City with their lives. Therefore, the more Grimm learned about the Molten Fire City, the more emotional he felt. In terms of population, the scale of the city, and the amount of resources traded, this Molten Fire City was clearly 100 times stronger than the Crimson family's Blazing Flame Monarch Wizard's pagoda. But even though he was envious, Grimm didn't dare to dream of occupying or owning such an area. In the sorcerer world, almost all of the high-grade resources had already been divided up by the large forces or high-grade sorcerers. Even if such a high-grade resource fell into his hands, it wouldn't bring him a huge amount of magic crystals, but an endless war between magi. Without sufficient strength to intimidate the enemy, it would be easy for Tier 4 sorcerers to covet these resources if they were exposed. The Crimson family did not have any Tier 4 sorcerers. Not only was it not a blessing for such a resource to fall into his hands, it might even cause the destruction of the entire family. Some time ago, there had been a few sorcerer wars against the Crimson family. On the surface, it seemed like a conflict between families, but the root of the problem was the lance plane that the Crimson family controlled. A decent dragon plane with an inexhaustible supply of dragon tokens. This was obviously not something a rising family could have. Hence, the wealth of the Crimson family attracted the attacks of many small and medium-sized families, like Hungry Wolf. If not for the Crimson family's solid foundation, the rising family that Grimm had created would have already become food for others. When that happened, Grimm would lose the protection of his family and be alone. He would have to hand over the Lance Plains World Waymark and be labeled as a failure, becoming the laughing stock of all sorcerers. Filled with endless fantasies, Grimm was led through the outskirts of the base, past the apprentices' area, and finally arrived in front of an underground cave. Here, a dark red membrane of light blocked the way forward. The lizard cavalry reined in their mounts and stood guard at the sides respectfully. Only Grimm swaggered into the barrier under the guidance of the Tier 2 sorcerer. It was as if he had passed through a transparent barrier of water, and he did not feel any obstruction. But at the same time, Grimm also sensed 4 to 5 detection waves of different functions scanning his body stealthily. Unfortunately, they were all blocked by the transparent flames around Grimm's body. As if he had received a message from a spell in the distance, the black-robed sorcerer smiled and bowed. "Lord Flame, please follow me. Lord Kiruk is already waiting for you." The meeting place was a gray underground hall. A Tier 3 sorcerer and 2 Tier 2 sorcerers were already waiting here. When they saw Grimm arrive, smiles appeared on their faces. The Tier 3 Lord Kiruk looked exactly the same as he did in the mental illusion. He was tall and skinny, with a dark green gem embedded in the middle of his forehead. He was very enthusiastic about Grimm's arrival. "You must be the legendary fire shaman tribe leader of the Alobis region, right? It's an honor to meet you, Sir Grimm." Kiruk had a smile on his face as he nodded to Grimm. The other two Tier 2 sorcerers were a man and a woman. Both of them were quite young, and they stood behind Kiruk, secretly sizing up Grimm. Those who were able to become high-grade sorcerers were all people with outstanding talent and luck. However, to be able to reach rank 3 before the age of 200 meant that his talent was a little too monstrous. Hence, when the two Tier 2 sorcerers from Molten City suddenly saw this legendary fire shaman, they could not help but feel a little excited. When she saw Grimm's handsome appearance and sturdy body, the young female sorcerer's eyes sparkled, and a smile appeared on her face. Grimm wasn't surprised that the other party was able to find out his identity. He had already done some research before coming here. Molten City was a well-known force in the central part of the continent, and it was a very powerful organization. This could be easily understood from the fact that they could occupy a large area all by themselves. On top of that, the Tixtet region where Molten City was located was too far away from the Crimson family. It was impossible for them to have any conflicts of interest, let alone any hidden conflicts. Therefore, Grimm did not have to worry about his safety here. Therefore, Grimm was not surprised or panicked at all when the other party exposed his identity. "It's my honor to visit Molten City. Everything here is so amazing. It's not a fluke that your organization could occupy the Tixtet region alone." "Haha, Lord Grimm, you're too kind." Wizard Kiruk chuckled and changed the topic. "Our Molten City has invited 2 wizards for a mission. The other one will arrive in about 2 days, so I'll have to trouble you to stay here for 2 days. In my opinion, I'll let Wizard Freena accompany you for the next 2 days." The female wizard standing behind Wizard Kiruk took a step forward and said with a smile, "Lord Grimm, why don't I show you around first?" This Wizard Freena had a beautiful appearance and a sexy body. The white robe she was wearing made her look even more beautiful, with a slim waist and long legs. However, when Grimm glanced at her, he sensed a faint energy radiation from her face and body. It seemed like her appearance and body had been modified with a spell. This kind of situation was very common among most low-ranking wizards. After all, a witch's beauty was also a resource that could be used. However, this kind of situation was very rare among high-ranking wizards. This was because high-grade witches were all strong-willed and strong-willed people. In many aspects, they were even stronger than wizards. How could they be willing to do such a shameful thing like exchanging their bodies for resources? "Thank you." Grimm smiled faintly and followed him out of the stone hall. After Grimm and Freena's footsteps disappeared into the depths of the tunnel, the other rank 2 wizard asked, "Lord Kiruk, what should we do about the mines? If this Lord Grimm wants to enter the mines with the excuse of a mission, should we stop him?" The tall and skinny Wizard Kiruk lowered his head and muttered, "This Grimm is here for the Kellis ore, so you must keep an eye on mines 2 and 3. If necessary, he can freely enter mine 4, but don't let him get close to mines 2 and 3. By the way, has the Flaming Tiger come to cause trouble these days? Last month, it was injured by Lord Dorian with the help of a spell circle. It hasn't invaded the mines since. However, in the past 2 days, there have been signs of its activity around mine 2. I suspect it is planning something again. Send more people. We must not give it a chance to break in. The last time it caused a ruckus in mine 3, many miners were injured or killed. It has seriously affected the production of the Eternal Gold mine." "Yes, I will arrange it personally." "All right, make sure everything is arranged properly. Don't let anything go wrong. Also, the other sealing master that we invited will be here soon. Once everyone is here, we will immediately capture and kill the Flaming Tiger. Before that, you must also find a way to track the flaming tiger's movements. It would be best if you can find out where its nest is. The rank 2 wizard's face showed a trace of difficulty, but he immediately gritted his teeth and said, "I will do it." Chapter 882. Over the next 2 days, Grim, accompanied by the beautiful Freena, toured almost all of the public areas of Molten City. Molten City was not small. If it was on the surface, it would be at least the size of a medium-sized city. However, the population of the entire underground Molten City did not exceed 3,000 to 4,000 people. 70% of the workers and servants lived in the outskirts of the stronghold. The core area, which could support 20,000 to 30,000 people, only had 200 to 300 magi. Most of the magi were either in the library or in their laboratories. The few who went out were in a hurry. As a result, even though there were so many botanical gardens, and other man-made landscapes in the huge core area, there was not a single person to be seen. Grim could see that Freena was drooling over him. If he beckoned with his finger, this beautiful magus would come to his bed in the middle of the night. However, Grim had something on his mind and was not in the mood to play games with her. Over the next 2 days, the resentment in Freena's eyes was obvious. Grim was not in the mood to care about this. The more he learned, the stranger he felt. This time, it was very likely that his enemy was someone he knew. When he found out from Freena that the one causing trouble in Molten City was a grade 3 flame tiger, his heart began to beat faster. When he saw the magical image Freena pulled out from the surveillance crystal, he was even more certain that it was the grade 3 flame tiger Sindar that had snuck over from the fire elemental plane. Speaking of which, Molten City had suffered an unexpected calamity. In order to prevent enemies from invading, they had set up a large number of wizard formations and magi on the outskirts of the mine. Above the mine was the wizard's pagoda guarded by the grade 4 wizard. Under this kind of protection, it was impossible for any external enemy to invade. But what the people of Molten City didn't expect was that the enemy didn't come from above, but from the depths of the lava sea where the mine was located. 2 years ago, a Class 3 flaming tiger with extremely high intelligence emerged from the underground lava sea. In one breath, it invaded many underground mines. Not only did it devour a large amount of exotic ores, it even caused the lava sea to pour into the mines, killing more than 600 Molten Fire City miners in one breath. From then on, this rank 3 flaming tiger seemed to have the intention to settle down in Molten Fire City. Usually, it would hide in the depths of the lava sea and sneak into the underground mines whenever it was free. Over and over again, the output of Molten Fire City's metal ores plummeted, and the recruited miners also suffered heavy casualties. As the managers of the mine, the Magi of Molten City naturally would not sit by and watch a strange beast wreak havoc in their family's territory. They had also formed teams to encircle and annihilate the Flaming Tiger a few times. Unfortunately, the Flaming Tiger would always escape using the ever-present lava sea. If the number of Magi they sent out was too little, or if their strength was not enough, they might be bitten by the Flaming Tiger instead. The number of sorcerers that were sent out increased, and the Flame Tiger was very cunning. It turned around and disappeared into the depths of the lava sea. Although there were a few fire magi in Molten Fire City, they were only at the level of 2. Searching for the flaming tiger in the lava sea was like throwing a meat bun at a dog. The rest of the magi used spell formations to isolate themselves from the boiling lava and were barely able to fight. However, if they were to venture deep into the lava sea, they would not be able to return. Therefore, the Magi of Molten City had all put down their work and guarded the vicinity of the underground mine. They were in a terrible state and were suffering unspeakable hardship. They had no choice but to issue a high-grade mission, hoping to recruit a powerful fire magus to kill the flaming tiger. Of course, worried that a single fire magus would have a hard time dealing with the flaming tiger alone, Molten Fire City also recruited a level 3 sealer. a level 3 fire magus, a level 3 sealer, and a level 3 magus from Molten Fire City. With this kind of strength, it should be more than enough to kill the flaming tiger. After understanding all of this, Grim could not help but ask Freya to take a look at the vicinity of the underground mine. Freya hesitated for a moment, then used a spell to ask Lord Kirak for permission. Only then did she bring Grim to the underground tunnel. After walking through the winding underground tunnel for half an hour, Grim could clearly feel the density of the fire elemental energy in the tunnel increasing rapidly. The smell of sulfur in the air was also becoming stronger. In a spacious underground hall, Grim finally saw a group of people that he had not seen in a long time. This was a place that one had to pass to reach the underground mine. The spacious underground stone hall was crowded with non-humankind slaves, who were wearing shackles and had their upper bodies naked, with only a piece of ragged cloth covering their lower bodies. They were all well-built and had tanned skin. Their naked upper bodies were covered with grease, stains, and crisscrossed whip marks. Although they were tall and mighty, their eyes were filled with numbness and patience. There was a long queue of people waiting to receive their tools to enter the tunnel. On the other side, there was a group of slaves of different races that had just come out of the mine. Each of them carried a wooden basket that was almost as tall as themselves, which was piled high with black ores. The surface of the ores reflected the fluorescent light from the walls of the cave, creating a colorful scene that was very beautiful. These were all extremely crude ores. Although the ores contained quite a lot of metals, without further grinding and filtering, it would be very difficult to distinguish which metals were more abundant. The people in charge of inspecting, weighing, and recording were all acolytes. Beside them were large groups of human mercenaries who were in charge of maintaining order in the underground hall. As for the two magi stationed here, they were lying on wooden chairs at the side of the hall, drinking tea and discussing something with animated expressions on their faces. Naturally, the miners, slaves, and subordinate mercenaries used another passage to enter and exit. On the other hand, Freya brought Grim to the upper passageway that only magi could use. Seeing Freya's arrival, the two Grade 1 magi quickly stood up and bowed to greet her. Did that strange beast come to cause trouble in the past few days? Although Freya was like a little bird in front of Grim, she was very dignified in front of these low-ranked magi. No, then open the tunnel. I want to go take a look at the lava sea with this lord. Yes. With Freya leading the way, the two magi naturally had no objections. Under their guidance, Grim and Freya entered a small, cold path. After a few turns, they arrived in front of a stone wall that was as smooth as a mirror. The two magi each took out a strange magic wand and pointed it at the center of the stone wall. Following a strange wave of magic, a huge stone door appeared in the center of the originally greenish-gray stone wall. Then, the stone door silently slid to one side, revealing the dark red viscous magma flowing outside the light film. As soon as the door opened, an energy barrier rose up and blocked the boiling magma outside. Even so, the temperature in the tunnel began to rise rapidly, quickly reaching 100 degrees. If an ordinary person were to be placed in such an environment, their flesh and blood would probably be cooked within a few seconds. Even the two magi stationed here could not help but wipe the sweat off their foreheads. Grim scanned the area, and the AI chip scanned the stone door as well as the dark red magma sea that filled his vision. The environment in the lava sea is rather complicated. Let me accompany you for a walk, Freya said with a smile. Grim shook his head and said indifferently, I won't go far. I'll just stay nearby and scout the environment. This way I'll have more confidence in the battle later. After saying that, he didn't bother to exchange pleasantries with the other party. He took a few steps towards the light membrane, and a layer of light red magic light suddenly rose from his body. Only then did he slowly pass through the light membrane and submerge into the surging sea of lava. Although the magma sea before him seemed to be motionless, the viscous magma was constantly surging. It was just that the entire space was filled with boiling, dark red magma, which gave people an illusion of the senses. The moment Grimm passed through the barrier suddenly felt a crushing force of over 1,000 kilograms. The boiling magma that corroded his bones and flesh was squeezed towards the center from all directions. Being in the middle, Grimm naturally had to endure this strange force. Grimm hesitated for a moment before slowly withdrawing the barrier into his body. The boiling magma in the surroundings squeezed over and tightly wrapped around him. When the boiling magma came into contact with his warm skin, there was no sizzling sound. Instead, waves of heat flowed into Grimm's body, making him feel so comfortable that he almost moaned. If he was still at rank 2, he might be able to withstand the extreme heat, but he would not be able to withstand the terrifying pressure. Now that he had advanced to rank 3, his body's affinity with the fire elemental essence had reached an extremely high level. Now that he was in the lava sea, not only did he not feel any pressure, he felt as if he was a fish in water. However, Grimm had to divide a portion of the fire energy from his body and spread it around him to protect his magus robes. While he might be able to withstand the terrifying heat, his clothes would not. If he did not want to run around naked, he could only use the fire energy to protect his clothes. Other magi might find it difficult to pass through the lava sea, but a fire magus would not have such a problem. Grimm chuckled, and his entire body immediately turned invisible. He turned into a humanoid flame that quickly traversed through the sticky magma sea. Relying on the different angles of the flames, Grimm darted left and right in the depths of the lava sea. His speed was several times faster than when he was flying in the air. Chapter 883. Grimm only stayed in the lava for 2 hours before returning to the underground tunnel. Moreover, it could be seen that these 2 hours of probing did not consume too much of his energy. Freyna, who was accompanying him, expressed her heartfelt admiration for him. With her strength as a rank 2 magus, she could barely hold on in the lava for 15 minutes. The rank 3 magi in Molten Fire City could hold on for a little longer, but they could only barely survive. If they were to encounter the rank 3 Flaming Tiger, they would not be able to display even a tenth of their strength in the lava sea. Low-grade fire resistance potions were fine for normal fire environments, but when faced with the lava that was as deep as the sea and the ferocious and cunning rank 3 Flaming Tiger, they were clearly not enough. If not for that, the powerful Molten Fire City would not have exposed themselves and asked for help from the outside world. Hence, Freyna was happy to see Grimm, who was like a fish in water, handling the lava with ease. I have a basic understanding of the environment here. Let's go back. Grimm's expression was relaxed, and even the magi from Molten Fire City smiled. The 2 guarding magi quickly waved their specially made magic wands and sealed the entrance. When Grimm was about to leave with Freyna, he turned around and glanced at the stone door that was slowly closing, a meaningful smile appearing on his face. Deep within the lava sea, the roiling lava was as viscous as jelly. Even if regular magi were immune to fire, it would still be extremely difficult for them to move through it. Therefore, true fire creatures all had their own unique movement method. After Grimm left, the lava sea regained its calm and flowed in accordance with the rhythm that had been established for a long time. Although it was not as fast and ferocious as the rivers on the surface, it was still majestic and unstoppable. However, in the midst of the surging magma, a strange red gem was also rolling and floating along with the wave. When it reached a certain singularity, the surface of the gem, which was covered in strange and complicated patterns, suddenly lit up with a red glow. This dot of red light was so inconspicuous in the dark red sea of lava, but it quickly dyed the entire gem. The elemental gem madly absorbed the dense fire elemental energy in the surroundings and quickly formed a 2-meter-tall flaming human figure. When large amounts of fire elemental energy entered the flaming human figure, a new Grimm was born in the depths of the lava sea. This was a new fire spell that used the core of a magic puppet as a base. It was mixed with a part of the soul attachment spell and projection spell, and it also copied some of the basic functions of the AI chip. Making use of the surging elemental vibrations in the lava sea, the fire clone dodged the runic spell formation near the underground tunnel. Once it was formed, it quickly moved, continuously moving towards the depths of the lava sea. Due to the immaturity of the technique, this fire doppelganger only had the strength of a grade 2 beginner. It might not be suitable to be used as a fighter, but it was more than enough to be used as a spy and messenger. As a pure fire creature, the flaming clone was only grade 2, but it could move freely in the lava sea. As it moved towards the depths of the lava sea, it used the elemental language unique to fire creatures to transmit a voice in all directions. Sindar! 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 The voice was not loud or surging, but it could be transmitted very far with the help of the omnipresent fire elemental energy. Until this strange sound was captured by a certain strange existence. It was a lava boulder the size of a small hill. The soft and fragile soil and rocks on the surface had been completely eroded by the lava sea. What was left was a huge metal ore that even the high temperature of the lava sea could not withstand. Looking from afar, the surface of the lava boulder was full of bumps and hollows, and its surface was densely covered with strange metals that shone brightly. It was the existence of these strange metals that prevented the erosion of the lava sea, and allowed the lava boulder to survive in this terrifying environment. At this moment, a 3-meter-long flaming tiger, wrapped in violent flames, was lying in a small nest dug out from the center of the lava boulder, sleeping soundly with its eyes closed. Beside it, the small cave was filled with metal ores of various shapes and sizes, as well as a large number of magical gems. Through the translucent body of the flaming tiger, one could vaguely see a purplish-red metal ore hoarding in its abdomen, wrapped in a crimson flame. Every time a layer of molten metal was eroded, the flaming tiger would immediately absorb it into its body. If Grimm was here, he would definitely be surprised to find that as the purplish gold ore slowly entered the flaming tiger's body, the aura of the flaming tiger's body gradually became stronger. However, this increase in aura was extremely slow. Without the scanning ability of the AI chip in Grimm's brain, he would not have been able to detect it. Although this increase in strength was slow, it was real. If this flaming tiger was given enough time and enough purplish gold ore, it might really be able to use this method to push its strength to the peak of grade 3. This was already very shocking. In the past 2 years, ever since it discovered that there was eternium ore in the metal vein that it needed, Sindar the flaming tiger had been entrenched in the area, unwilling to leave. From time to time, it would run to the human stronghold to plunder some things it needed. Unfortunately, eternium ore was also something that the humans needed more. After a few times, although it had plundered a lot of metal ores, the eternium ore that Sindar urgently needed was very little. Left with no choice, Sindar could only open up a hidden nest near the human stronghold and play guerrilla warfare with the human magi. However, today, just as Sindar was slowly and contentedly absorbing the eternium ore, a strange elemental ripple swept through its elemental body. Sindar! Sindar! Sindar stood up abruptly, an expression of disbelief appearing on its flaming tiger face. Why did it feel like someone was calling its name outside? Could it be a trick of the human magi? But how did its name leak out? Could it be that the harsh environment of the lava sea could not hinder the prophecy of the human magi? Even though it was bewildered, Sindar no longer had the mood to stay here. With a surge of flames, Sindar the flaming tiger had already silently snuck out of the nest, taking a roundabout route in the direction of the strange elemental ripple. This feeling, why did it feel so familiar? Inside the lava sea, Grimm's flaming doppelganger was moving quickly while constantly vibrating the lava, embedding the message it wanted to convey into it, letting it slowly spread in the vast lava sea. An hour had passed, but there was still no result. Could it be that the flaming tiger was hiding somewhere further away? The flaming doppelganger frowned slightly and turned around, intending to find another place to continue the broadcast. However, just as the flaming doppelganger turned around, it was surprised to find a tall flaming tiger made of pure raging flames sitting majestically behind it, using a pair of strange eyes made of golden flames to size it up curiously. The distance between the two was so close that they could hear each other. The sulfuric flames coming out of the flaming tiger's huge nose could almost ignite the flaming doppelganger's skin. "Do we know each other?" Sindar the flaming tiger asked curiously. It was really curious. The flaming figure in front of it felt vaguely familiar, but the opponent's method of forming solid bodies was very clever. If it did not smash the flaming figure's body, it would be very difficult to detect the spiritual waves hidden within. It seemed that it only knew one Magus in the Magus world. But that guy was only a grade 2, it was impossible for him to form a doppelganger and come so far to find it. Just as Sindar the flaming tiger was feeling bewildered, the blurry face of the flaming doppelganger suddenly shook, and Grimm's appearance condensed. "Sindar, we've only been apart for a few days and you already don't recognize me? It's really you." Sindar was stunned at first, then raised its nose to the side of the flaming doppelganger and took a deep breath, then said in shock, You've advanced? It's all thanks to you, Sindar, that I gained a lot in the fire elemental plane. I've only advanced to grade 3 a few years ago. You won your gains with your own abilities, don't blame me." Sindar's golden eyes suddenly lit up. "Did the Magus in the stronghold invite you here?" "That's right." "Then what are you going to do? Help them deal with me?" At this point, Sindar the flaming tiger put on a fierce expression. "If I wanted to deal with you, do you think I would have sent this doppelganger here?" Grimm's face that was condensed from flames showed an annoyed expression. Although this flaming tiger was intelligent and cunning, its personality was no different from other elemental creatures. It was not as cunning as human magi. "Then why are you here this time?" Sindar could not help but be confused. "Before we negotiate, I think it's better for us to understand each other's needs. Lord Sindar, why have you stayed here for so long?" Sindar hesitated for a moment. It did not feel any malice from Grimm, so it hesitated for a moment before speaking the truth. "I need the Eternium ore here." Hearing this answer, Grimm's face immediately revealed a charming smile. "Good. Very good. What's good? Our interests are not in conflict, because what I need is the Kellis or Flaming Tiger probed. You mean we can work together?" Chapter 884. Within Molten Fire City. A small welcoming banquet was being held in full swing. Grimm and the sealer, who had just arrived, were undoubtedly the main characters of the banquet, and they were warmly welcomed by the higher-ups of Molten Fire City. Unlike previous banquets, this welcoming banquet was held in a large stone hall. Most of the participants were rank 2 and 3 magi. The 3 vice city lords of Molten Fire City had all revealed themselves, but one of them was a projection spell. Kalak, male, rank 3, elemental magus, venom. He was tall and skinny, with a dark green gem embedded in the middle of his forehead. Linus, male, rank 3, body tempering magus. He was a tall and sturdy bald man with a large golden sword on his back. Dorian, male, rank 3, magic circle master. He had a gloomy expression, and his exposed body was engraved with strange, brightly colored runes. It was obvious that Magus Linus was not in Molten Fire City. He had only used a projection spell to create a body to attend this banquet. As for the rank 3 sealer, who had rushed over from the southern region of Elathia, she was a middle-aged female magus with a gloomy expression. She had triangular eyes and a bulbous nose. Her entire appearance was unsightly. This was especially surprising to Grimm. After all, with the methods of magi, whether it was organ transplants or regrown limbs, they were not troublesome matters. Changing one's physique and appearance was a piece of cake. It was as easy as reaching out one's hand. As such, none of the male or female magi that Grimm had seen so far had particularly ugly appearances. Only those whose bodies had been severely contaminated by spells, and their souls had been damaged, would have an appearance that was unacceptable to others. However, Grimm did not sense any artificial modifications on this rank 3 sealer. This also meant that her current appearance was her original appearance. However, Grimm did not have any prejudice towards this. After all, there were too many unconventional people among magi. The more unconventional a person was, the more frightening they would be. This meant that all the success she had achieved so far was due to her own hard work and strength. There were no tricks involved. Clap clap clap. Wizard Kalak clapped his hands a few times, and all the wizards in the banquet hall stopped talking and focused their attention on him. Today, we have the honor of inviting the legendary wizard Grimm from the Alobes region and the powerful wizard Unide from the Elathia region. Let us give them a warm round of applause. Thunderous applause immediately rang out in the hall. Grimm took a step forward with a smile on his face. He looked around, raised the cup in his hand, and drained it in one gulp before returning to his original position. There was not the slightest smile on the face of Witch Unit. She raised her glass and touched it to her lips, which was considered a greeting. Inside the hall, Molten City's Tier 2 Magi numbered around 30 as well. Every one of them wore astonished expressions as they observed the 2 Tier 3 Magi from afar. Their gazes lingered on the legendary fire wizard Grimm for the longest time. Although the Alobes region was hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from Molten City, almost everyone present had heard of the rumor that a Tier 2 Magus had killed a Tier 3 Magus in the arena. To put it bluntly, at this moment, the name of this legendary rank 3 fire wizard was even more popular than some Tier 4 Magi. It was even more shocking. Now that this fellow had advanced to the 3rd order, how strong would he be now? To be honest, many of the Magi present were very curious and could not wait to find out. However, in a situation like this, no one dared to ask him directly. They could only suppress their curiosity and wait for the results to be revealed in the future. High-ranked Magi gatherings were much simpler and more direct than low-ranked Magi gatherings. After the simple introductions and exchanges, everyone could go about their own business. Some Magi who were worried about their own experiments or had specific duties in Molten City left quietly. Under Wizard Kirak's invitation, Grimm and Unid turned around and went to another secret room that was even quieter and more secluded. Here, Wizard Dorian gave them a detailed and comprehensive introduction of the Flaming Tiger. When Wizard Dorian finished his report, Wizard Kella couldn't help but turn his face to Grimm. Lord Grimm, you've already stepped on the lava sea yesterday. Do you think it's suitable to be our battlefield? Grimm's eyes couldn't help but slightly squint. After thinking for a moment, he gently shook his head. The lava sea that Wizard Freya brought me to had a temperature of more than 3,400 degrees, and the pressure of the magma was as high as 212 degrees. I might not have any problems moving around in there, but if it was someone else, even the few of you here, I'm afraid they wouldn't even last an hour. After hearing Grimm's words, the 3 Vice City Lords of Molten City exchanged glances. After we reached an agreement with the 2 of you, we came up with a hunting plan, Kalak said slowly. Why don't you say it? Unid's sharp voice sounded. We plan on setting up a trap near the underground mine to lure the Flaming Tiger into an ambush. Once it falls into an ambush, Lord Dorian will be able to use the runic Magus array buried in the mine to instantly disperse all the flames within a radius of a kilometer. At that time, Ms. Unid can take the opportunity to seal it. Then what should I do? Grimm asked with a frown. Of course, you need to hide in the lava sea first. Once the Flame Tiger falls into an ambush, we will be responsible for killing it. You need to block its escape route and not let it escape into the lava sea. Grimm's brows furrowed again. As the person in charge, he arranged for the few of them to be together so they could look after each other. Unid would also hide in the dark and only appear when the flame tiger had nowhere to run. This way, it seemed like all the risks were on his head. Once the flame tiger fell into an ambush, it would definitely try its best to escape into the lava sea, blocking the flame tiger's path. What a good mission! Grim stroked his chin and chuckled coldly, his face full of dissatisfaction. Lord Grim, if the mission is successful, we can add an additional 100 kilograms of Kellis ore to your mission reward. 100 kilograms of Kellis ore? If it was refined into Kellis alloy, it might not even be enough to create half a space furnace, not to mention the costly magic furnace. Grim finally stopped smiling and said with a straight face, Lord Kirak, that's a grade 3 flame tiger we're talking about. If we force it into a dead end, I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it alone. If it escapes, I won't be able to bear the consequences. Kirak's expression turned awkward. His lips moved slightly, and after discussing with the other 2 deputy city lords, he turned back to Grim. How about this? Molten City will send you 2 more grade 2 fire wizards and have them listen to your orders. If it's successful, we're willing to pay 170 kilograms of Kellis ore. At this point, Grim knew that this was the other party's bottom line. He could only nod in agreement helplessly. The time will be the day after tomorrow. Lord Dorian will arrange the runic spell formation as soon as possible. Once the trap is set up, we'll act according to the plan and see if that flame tiger will fall for it. In Flame Tiger Sindar's lair. While Molten City was secretly plotting out the details, Lord Kirak would never have guessed that everything that happened in the secret room had already been projected by the fire clone using the soul brand. Sindar lay prone on a pile of metal ore, watching the scene in the secret room projected by the fire clone with great interest. He also heard the contents of the Magi's discussion. Although he was full of confidence in his fire abilities, after listening to the arrangements of the human Magi, Sindar's heart was filled with fear. If he didn't know about all this, and was lured into a trap by the other party using the ore as bait, the chances of him escaping from the encirclement of 5 grade 3 Magi was almost 0. These were not 5 cabbages, but 5 grade 3 Magi. To be honest, that talisman formation master alone had already injured Sindar with his strange witchcraft ability. This caused Sindar, who had always looked down on human Magi, to be overwhelmed with shock. He had to admit that human Magi were much weaker than powerful elemental creatures in terms of physique and control over elemental power. However, in terms of battle techniques and sinister methods, they were more than 10 streets ahead of elemental creatures. At this moment, suddenly hearing the other party's sinister plan, even this strange flame tiger, who feared neither the heavens nor the earth, could not help but want to slip away. You heard it too. Those fellows have arranged such a terrifying trap at the mine. I think we should temporarily cancel our plans. I can run to other places and play for a few years. When they lose their patience, I'll run back. Flame Tiger Sindar said hesitantly. Hearing the words of his temporary ally, the fire clone was speechless. However, he had a new understanding of how difficult it was to deal with flame creatures. Indeed, the plan that Sindar thought of was undoubtedly the most convenient and the most speechless. However, it was obviously not in line with Grim's interests, so he could only reject it. Sindar, don't you believe in my brain? Don't worry, I will definitely come up with a perfect plan to make their plans fail. As for us, we can make a huge profit and escape far away. Grim could only use his silver tongue to persuade this cunning flame tiger. Chapter 885. 2 days later. In front of the exit of another tunnel, Grim silently observed the flowing dark red light that was transmitted through the light membrane. Vaguely, he could even hear the rumbling of the flowing magma outside the light film. Lord Grim, we'll have to rely on your protection for this operation. The 2 grade 2 fire magi sent by Molten City were a pair of siblings. The older brother had a serious expression on his face as he briefly introduced them to Grim. The younger sister did not say a word, following closely behind her brother. However, from the few times she stole glances at Grim, it was clear that she had a lively personality and a decent appearance. "All right, we'll act according to the situation." Grim gave a simple reply and took the lead to step out of the light membrane. The two Grade 2 siblings did not dare to walk directly into the sea of lava like Grim. Instead, they quickly cast spells, buffing themselves with elemental auras and drinking some potions that could quickly recover their energy. Only then did they carefully step out of the light membrane. If a Grade 1 Magus was a beginner who had just caught a glimpse of the Hall of Truth, then a Grade 2 Magus would be a true believer in the truth. The sea of lava before them was already 300 meters deep. It was impossible for a normal Magus to survive here. Although the two fire wizard siblings could withstand the scorching flames and the high pressure of the lava, they were losing their strength every second. In this aspect, they were not as casual and natural as Grim. Those who could become fire magi had naturally completed their elemental transformation. Amidst the surging, dark red lava, three almost transparent flaming figures looked at each other and silently snuck into their predetermined positions. In order to prevent the lava from invading the underground mine of Molten City, countless defensive spell formations had been set up. Unfortunately, many of them had been destroyed by the Grade 3 Flaming Tiger, causing great damage to the interior of the mine. Although the lava in the tunnel had been emptied and the defensive spell formations had been repaired, the entire mine's defensive system was in a mess. It was no longer as united as before. This time, the Rune Master of Molten City had started from there. He had purposely left a seemingly unintentional loophole in the mine's defensive system to lure the Flaming Tiger into the trap. However, such a trap couldn't be too obvious. Therefore, it was unknown whether the Flaming Tiger would take the bait or when it would take the bait. Grim and the two Fire Magi's mission was to lie in ambush in the depths of the lava and wait for the Flaming Tiger to fall into the trap before rushing out to block the Flaming Tiger's path of retreat. It was easier said than done. Therefore, the two fire shamans from Molten Fire City followed closely behind Grim. They were anxious and could not calm down. As Tier 2 Fire Magi, the siblings were naturally very powerful. After transforming into flaming figures, their concealment methods were also astonishing. However, when they shifted their attention to the Tier 3 Mythic-ranked Fire Wizard, they could not help but inwardly praise him. As expected of a Mythic-ranked Fire Wizard, both sides were so close, yet, they could not sense the slightest bit of difference. Like the flames that could be seen everywhere in the lava, Grim slowly walked through the dark red lava. If not for the siblings being able to see each other with their naked eyes, they would not have been able to distinguish Grim from the flames in the background. The three of them quickly traversed the lava, and very quickly, they arrived at their predetermined location. There, a 3-meter-thick, 5-meter-tall spindle-shaped runestone floated in the lava, moving slowly. Sensing the three's arrival, the runestone's strange inscriptions lit up one after another, flickering with a faint glow. The female fire magus took a step forward and placed her transparent palm on the elemental barrier propped up by the runestone. As she muttered an incantation, the runestone shook slightly, and the outer elemental barrier split open, revealing a small door on the surface of the steel-like boulder. Without any hesitation, the three of them quickly entered the portal. The space inside the runestone was not large to begin with. Now that the three magi had entered, it immediately became somewhat cramped. When the entrance to the runestone closed up, the three of them sat cross-legged inside, barely able to fit inside. However, if the three of them moved a little, they would inevitably bump into each other and have physical contact. The runestone was a part of the alarm system installed by Molten Fire City to detect movements outside the mines. If the Flame Tiger really wanted to sneak into the mines, it would definitely avoid this place. Therefore, it was safe for the three of them to hide here. In order to avoid any awkwardness, the two fire magi could only close their eyes and rest, silently waiting for news from afar. Grimm, on the other hand, kept looking around at the runestone he was in. The inside of the runestone was not empty. Countless strange runes and inscriptions were densely etched on the surrounding rock walls. Grimm could clearly see that some of them were energy storage runes, some were energy absorption runes, some were defense runes, and some were alarm runes. Although he did not know much about the mechanism of the runestone, he could understand a lot just by looking at these strange runes. Using a runestone alone as a part of the alarm system was too monotonous and rigid. It would be very difficult to prevent enemies from sneaking in. Therefore, the runestones here were usually guarded by magi. With the tireless power of the runestone and the powerful spiritual force of the guarding magi, it would be extremely difficult for ordinary enemies to sneak in unknowingly. Just like now, Grimm could clearly sense that the runes etched on the walls of the runestone were resonating with the two Grade 2 magi. The two complemented each other, and the combination of their aura and abilities gave their spiritual force a qualitative improvement. Grimm could not help but ask, "Did you buy this runestone, or did you make it yourself?" The Fire Magi siblings opened their eyes and looked at Grimm curiously. In the end, it was the elder brother who spoke. The basic knowledge of the runestone was bought from the Silver Alliance, but the actual manufacturing process was done by Lord Dorian himself. From what I know, most Magi organizations do this. After all, it is impossible to rely on others to build up our own defense system. It's safer to build it ourselves. Grimm nodded silently and closed his eyes again. The two siblings looked at each other and could only shrug their shoulders helplessly. Once again, they turned their attention to the detection and scanning of the surrounding lava sea. However, the silence did not last long. The female fire magus suddenly opened her eyes and whispered in pleasant surprise, "There's movement in the mine. That flaming tiger seems to be destroying the walls of the mine." Grimm's eyes widened as a pensive look appeared on his face. At this moment, a flaming tiger was frantically destroying the walls of the mine in the outskirts of Molten Fire City. Unlike the rocks in other regions, the walls of the mine did not show any signs of softening or collapsing even though they were soaked in the terrifying lava. The large amount of metal mixed within made the volcanic rocks as hard as steel, but they could withstand the corrosion of high temperatures for a long period of time. Hence, it was extremely difficult to destroy them. However, the flaming tiger did not seem to mind. It stood in the surging magma, waving its huge flaming claws and digging at the rock wall that was as hard as steel with loud bangs. No matter how powerful the Magi of Molten Fire City were, it was impossible for them to protect an entire mine that spanned tens of kilometers with runic spell formations. Hence, the most concentrated runic spell formations were usually concentrated at the weak points of the mine and at the entrance. Today, however, the flaming tiger that had disappeared for a period of time actually did the exact opposite. It did not attempt to enter the mine, but instead chose to dig at the outskirts of the mine that the Magi would not be able to protect. The constant absorption of Eternium essence over the past few days had made the flaming tiger's elemental body slightly different from before. Every time the tiger's sharp claws made of pure flames attacked, not only would they contain a powerful might of flames, they would also bring along a whistling wind, displaying its frightening physical attack power. With a swipe of its claws, a pit that was half a meter deep appeared on the wall that was harder than steel. At the bottom of the pit were terrifying cracks that were as dense as a spider's web. The flaming tiger's claws dug without stopping, and in the blink of an eye, it had dug out a huge pit that was 7 to 8 meters deep. With this speed, it would not take more than half a day for the flaming tiger to dig through more than 30 meters of the wall and directly into the tunnel of the mine. This scene was obviously out of the expectations of the higher-ups of Molten Fire City, and the few Tier 3 Magi who were hiding behind the scenes could no longer sit still. With a violent wave of magic, 2 Tier 3 Magi simultaneously appeared in the sea of lava. Unlike Grimm, who had transformed into a fire elemental form and was one with the sea of lava. These two Tier 3 magi were obviously not suited to battle in the sea of lava. However, the current situation was a little different from before. The flaming tiger did not step into the trap of the spell formation, so the two magi could only hold back their hatred and attack, hoping that they could lure it into the trap. That Kirak and Wizard Dorian stood on a huge rolling stone ball. They pushed aside the obstructing magma and angrily rushed towards the flaming tiger. Both sides immediately started a fight to the death outside the mine. However, although it was a fight, the two magi were actually just defending, trying their best to nullify the flaming tiger's endless attacks. In the sea of lava, the flaming tiger's battle power was simply astonishing. Chapter 886. As a rank 3 wizard, how could he not retaliate when he was being attacked? Wizard Kalak waved his hand, and a huge ball of venom shot out towards the flaming tiger, who was frantically digging for the stone orb. The flaming tiger roared and leaped, disappearing from where it stood. When it reappeared, it was already on the other side of the stone orb and continued to attack. The dark green venom ball missed its target and instantly exploded in the sea of lava, dyeing the dark red lava within 100 meters black. If this was on land, all the plants and creatures within 100 meters would have been poisoned to death. Even small bacteria would have a hard time surviving inside. Unfortunately, they were currently in the depths of the sea of lava, which was 300 meters deep. Although the venom was powerful, it was severely restricted by the harsh environment. The lethal poison ring, which was supposed to last for half a month, didn't even last for 10 fingers under the terrifying lava's erosion before it completely disappeared. The poisonous cloud formed by the evaporation of the venom could not spread any further, so it also disappeared. Wizard Dorian, who was inside the stone orb, raised his magic staff high and pointed at the flaming tiger. Every time he pointed his magic staff, a dense rune light circle would form under the flaming tiger's body. Unfortunately, before the rune light circle could completely bind the flaming tiger, the rank 3 flaming tiger had already dodged it with brute force and agility. Wizard Dorian became ruthless. The tip of his magic staff flashed, and various rune circles with different functions flew towards the flaming tiger like a lasso. As long as the opponent could not dodge it, the dense rune circles would firmly bind them in place. This created the best opportunity for Wizard Kalak to attack with his poison. Unfortunately, not only was the flaming tiger extremely cunning, it was also extremely sensitive to energy fluctuations. As long as there was a slight abnormality in the magic elements around it, it would quickly change its position, not giving the enemy the chance to bind it. The two rank 3 wizards were barely able to chase after the flaming tiger, but it was very difficult to penetrate through the flowing lava and instantly hit its body. The three of them fought as they moved through the sea of lava, constantly changing their positions and turning the place into a chaotic lava storm. The area where they were fighting was 5 miles away from Grimm's rune stone, so it was very difficult for Grimm and the others to grasp the actual situation on the battlefield. They could only get a rough idea of the battle through the simple messages sent by the two rank 3 wizard. On the battlefield, Kalak and Dorian, who were hiding in the transparent stone orb, were almost going crazy. That flaming tiger was unexpectedly cunning. If the two wizards went forward to fight it, it would pounce on them and fight them. If the two wizards fought while retreating, trying to lure it into a trap not far away, it would leave and continue digging at the walls of the mine. After a few times, the two wizards could still hold on, but the stone orb that they were hiding in could no longer. After all, one of them was a venom magician, while the other was a rune formation master. Neither of them belonged to the earth element, so they summoned the transparent stone ball with a piece of sorcery equipment. Once the stone ball was broken, they would lose their protective magic tools, and could only fight with the flaming tiger while pushing the magma away. If that happened, they would be in an even worse situation. If the battlefield was moved to the surface, The two higher-ups of Molten City would not have any stage fright. But in such a harsh environment, it was difficult for their own witchcraft to be used to its fullest. Therefore, no matter how hard the two rank 3 wizards racked their brains, they could not suppress the hateful rank 3 flaming tiger in such a terrible environment. Finally, Kalak sent a message to Grimm to join the battle. Inside the rune stone, the two fire wizards of Molten City opened their eyes at the same time and whispered to Grimm, Lord Kalak has requested for you to join the battle. Grimm pretended to be surprised and said, This seems to be different from the original plan, right? The trap has not been opened yet. If I join the battle rashly, I might scare the flaming tiger away. The older brother smiled bitterly and said, Lord Kalak has already said that the plan cannot be carried out. We can only chase the flaming tiger away first. We'll find a chance to discuss how to fight later. At this point, Grimm could no longer refuse. He immediately turned into a ball of flame and came out from the gap of the rune stone. He quickly rushed towards the battlefield. For a Tier 3 sorcerer, a distance of 5 kilometers was but a dozen or so miles. The flaming tiger, who was fighting with the two wizards, suddenly stopped and raised its head. Its eyes were like torches as it stared at the depths of the lava sea, as if it had sensed a great enemy approaching. The two rank 3 wizards already knew what was going on, so they did not want to let the flaming tiger go. They both took out powerful spells to keep the flaming tiger busy. The transparent stone ball trembled violently for a while and finally collapsed. The magic ring on Wizard Kalak's right pinky suddenly exploded, and a chaotic flow of energy surged. Obviously, it had been severely damaged. After destroying a rank 3 wizard item, Wizard Kalak's mood immediately became extremely gloomy. He let out a low roar and used his poisonous aura to defend against the lava that suddenly surrounded him. At the same time, he slowly reached out his right hand towards the flaming tiger. Whoosh! Suddenly, a big green hand appeared between Kalak and the flaming tiger, viciously grabbing towards the flaming tiger. Help me hold it down. Hearing Kalak's quick transmission, Dorian, who was standing in a transparent 3-dimensional rune circle, also clenched his teeth. He pulled out a lion-tooth pendant from his neck and threw it towards the flaming tiger. The lion-tooth pendant flew halfway and suddenly exploded into a sky full of bone fragments. It turned into a rapid wave that swept across a huge space of 100 meters. Naturally, the flaming tiger was within it. In the next second, a strange quicksand trap suddenly appeared under the flaming tiger's body. Without giving the flaming tiger any time to struggle, the flaming tiger's huge body sunk into the ground. At this moment, Kalak's big green hand also whistled and grabbed towards the flaming tiger, perfectly coordinating with the quicksand trap. Being attacked from both sides, the rank 3 flaming tiger was extremely furious. As it struggled with all its might, the quicksand trap flashed with a red light, allowing it to break free from 2 tiger claws. The flaming tiger held onto the edge of the trap, raised its head, and let out a deafening roar towards the big green hand that was grabbing towards it. A layer of golden flames emerged from its body, firmly blocking the big hand. The flames and the poisonous hand collided, producing a strange, sizzling sound. Merciless hand was rapidly melting, and the golden flames had turned into a glossy green. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Just as the flaming tiger and the 2 rank 3 magi were locked in a stalemate, the sea of lava behind the flaming tiger parted, and an almost transparent flaming figure appeared. With a raise of its hands, a strange long whip with surging flames coiled around the flaming tiger's body. The flaming tiger was originally a flaming creature, so it was naturally impossible for it to be injured by flames. However, the flaming whip had firmly bound it to the ground, and it no longer had the agility it had before. Good, seeing that Grimm's first move was successful, Kalak shouted excitedly. He and Wizard Dorian immediately flew towards the flaming tiger's side, planning to cooperate with Grimm to capture the flaming tiger in one fell swoop. Not far away, the figure of the sealer Yonid also appeared, rushing towards them quickly. However, at this moment, Grim, who was trying his best to bind the flaming tiger, suddenly had a change in expression. He quickly transmitted a message to the others. Quick, dodge! With that, Grim had already abandoned the flaming whip, and suddenly turned into a ball of flames, disappearing on the spot. How, after all, Kalak and Dorian did not have any tacit understanding with Grim, so when they suddenly heard his transmission, they could not help but be stunned for a moment. And this pause was enough to make them suffer a great deal. Inexplicably, the flaming tiger's body suddenly exploded with a tyrannical aura. Then, a 10-meter-tall lava giant suddenly appeared. With a loud roar, a wild and ferocious giant fist smashed towards the two of them. Rank 3. Another Rank 3 Magus. Where did it come from? Countless thoughts appeared in the minds of the two higher-ups of Molten City, but they could not find an answer even after much thought. Faced with the almost berserk lava giant, Kalak and Dorian, who had extremely weak bodies, did not dare to take its violent attack head-on, and began to retreat with all their might. However, the lava giant's stone fist had already rapidly passed through the flowing lava, sending a terrifying force to the two magi. With one punch, the shields of the two magi were almost broken by half. With two punches, the two magi staggered backwards, their faces filled with horror. With 3 punches, the two magi simultaneously healed. Just as the fourth punch was about to land, the two magi would inevitably suffer some physical damage. Grim suddenly appeared beside them, grabbed them, and instantly teleported away. However, no matter how fast his flame leap was, the shock waves from the lava giant's punch quickly caught up to them, causing the 3 of them to be thrown far away in a turbulent torrent. The lava giant, which had unleashed such terrifying power in one breath, rapidly collapsed after a few punches, once again disintegrating into a chaotic and ruthless elemental aura. Soul projection. Damn it, it's an elemental talisman. Sealer Yonid's shrill and hoarse voice suddenly sounded from the periphery of the battlefield. She had witnessed the entire process, and could clearly see that the terrifying lava giant was not a true elemental entity, but a soul projection formed by an elemental talisman. The entire soul projection had such great power, and after venting it in one breath, it collapsed on its own. However, even though it was only an illusory projection, the explosive power it possessed in that short instant caused the expressions of the few Rank 3 Magi to change drastically. Chapter 887. The opponent had actually used a rare grade item? This unexpected reality shocked the few magi present to the point where they could hardly contain themselves. Since a long time ago, being equipped with alchemy items, equipped with powerful magic tools, and using a large number of magic tools had become the greatest distinguishing feature of human magi compared to other intelligent races. In terms of strength, human magi could not compare to ogres. In terms of physique, human magi could not compare to most ferocious magical beasts. In terms of agility, human magi could not compare to Fane elves. In terms of spiritual force, human magi could not compare to natural mutants. However, human magi had managed to suppress these ferocious magical beasts, natural mutants, and powerful intelligent races, becoming fearsome rulers above them. What did they rely on? They relied on a large number of alchemy items, magic tools, as well as a strong ability to mobilize people. In the eyes of magi, most elemental creatures refused to use alchemy items. This was due to their personal preferences, but it was also related to the fact that elemental creatures lacked a comprehensive system of alchemy. Some high-ranked and intelligent elemental creatures might look for some natural magic gems to act as support tools in battle, but it was rare to see a large number of man-made, extraordinary-grade items. Just now, the Flame Tiger had used a magical tool from the Lava Giant tribe to unleash a violent attack at the last moment. This was something that the Magi found hard to understand. However, no matter how hard it was to understand, what had already happened. They could only choose to accept it. The two magi who had escaped with Grimm's help nodded to him in thanks. In truth, the rank 3 flame tiger's attack could not have caused much damage to them. After all, elemental damage could be reduced or nullified through various methods, but pure physical attacks could not be nullified. Unless the two magi had prepared a spirit scepter or a similar spell that could allow them to temporarily turn incorporeal to avoid physical attack. If not, they would have to bear the full brunt of the lava giant's attack. From the strength of the lava giant's attack, it could be seen that if the two magi had not dodged it, they would have needed at least a month or two to repair their damaged bodies. At their level, their extremely high vitality made it very difficult for irreversible damage to occur to their bodies. However, if it did, the consequences would be very serious. One had to know that the body of a rank 3 sorcerer was often tempered by the sorcerer's spiritual waves day and night to form a compatible physique. Once a part of the body was reborn or a wizard's spell was transplanted, a huge amount of time and resources would be needed to readjust it to a level that was most compatible with one's soul attribute and spiritual undulations. In this period of time, the battle prowess of the injured magi would inevitably decline. Therefore, Cadillac and Dorian had a good impression of Grimm's righteous act, and the relationship between the three of them was much closer than before. The failure of their first hunt left the magi feeling a little dejected. After a simple greeting, they all returned to Molten City. Deep within the lava sea, Sindar's lair, Flaming Tiger roared furiously. "Damn it, what is your main body trying to do? Wasn't it supposed to be a fake fight? Why did you create such a huge commotion? You almost caused me to fall into the hands of a human magus." Sindar's originally dark red body of flames was now covered with dense dark spots. At this moment it was expanding and extending crazily. From afar, they looked like abscesses growing on an animal's body. They were densely packed, increasing in number and size. As the dark spots spread out, the flames that were constantly swirling around Sindar's body were eroded to the point that they were dim and seemed to be on the verge of being extinguished. For the first time in his life, Sindar was sick, appearing weak and listless. This was a type of poison. A terrifying poison that could even corrode magic flames. The flaming clone stood silently, its body surging with crimson flames that were almost liquid. It seemed to not have noticed Flaming Tiger's condition. "Lord Sindar, you performed well today. Under such circumstances, those magi probably don't think that you have the ability to invade the underground mine in the short term." "Damn it, what am I saying to you? Don't you understand?" The calm attitude of the flaming clone enraged Flaming Tiger once again. "Just now, the other, you almost caused my death. I need you to give me an explanation now, or else." Flaming Tiger took a few steps forward, baring its fangs at the flaming clone's body. "Lord Sindar, I think, as allies, we should have some basic trust between us. Before you let your anger get to your head, shouldn't you take a look at what's under you?" "What's under me?" Flaming Tiger Sindar was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and was surprised to find that the floor of the lair he had dug out had been etched with a complicated and exquisite spell formation. However, there were a few grooves where the magic nodes and magic circuits were located that had not been inlaid with magic crystals and had yet to be activated, which was why it did not attract his attention. "What is this? What did you do to my lair while I was away?" Although Sindar the Flaming Tiger had lived for many years longer than Grimm, he was clearly not proficient in these strange and unpredictable high-level occult contents. Therefore, he could only stare at the flame doppelganger with his huge, bronze bell-like flaming eyes. Sindar secretly swore to himself that if he sensed any signs of danger, he would attack mercilessly, not giving the enemy a chance to plot against him. This is a spirit-gathering spell formation. It's also the basic component for most spell formations to operate. The face of the flaming clone once again transformed into Grimm's face, If you want your injuries to heal quickly, with the help of this spirit-gathering spell formation, it will be 10 times faster." Sindar lowered his head and sniffed a few times on the spell formation. Although he did not understand such fine and subtle things, as a high-grade flame creature, he had an intuition for danger that other lifeforms could not hope to achieve. In the crisscrossing spell formation that was filled with strange and mysterious runes, he did not sense any smell of danger. On the contrary, this spell formation gave him a strange feeling of tranquility and intoxication. "Activate it. I'm warning you, don't do anything behind my back." The flaming clone opened his mouth and spat out a storage ring. He poured out a pile of magic crystals and carefully embedded them into the nodes of the spirit-gathering spell formation. As magical energy flowed and connected in the nodes, the runes that were immersed in mysterious power lit up, forming a small spell formation that covered the entire nest. When the spell formation was activated and started operating, the massive amount of fire elements that were scattered in the surroundings rushed in like rivers returning to the sea. In an instant, the concentration of fire elements in the nest increased by more than 10 times. With the operation of the spell formation, more and more fire elements gathered, and there were even dark red smoke-like flames appearing inside the nest. Flaming Tiger Sindar tried to breathe. The dense and pure fire element particles had already begun to transform into flame energy, and it was much easier to absorb them than the free fire elements in the space. Sindar could absorb fire elements like this even without the spirit-gathering spell formation. However, it was purely relying on its own elemental instincts, and it was far less efficient than the spirit-gathering spell formation. Sindar estimated that the effect of absorbing fire elements in this spirit-gathering spell formation was 20 to 30 times faster than the accumulation of his innate abilities. This also meant that if he slept here for a day, he would be able to accumulate as much as a month's worth of energy. Sindar did not have the habit of pretending to be polite. Once he realized that it was beneficial to him, he immediately found the most comfortable place in the spell formation and laid down, stretching his body in satisfaction. When the tens of thousands of red dots rushed into his body like swallows returning to their nests, the toxic elements that had troubled him for a long time began to wither and disappear under the repeated scouring of the flame energy. The dark green spots became smaller and smaller, and his body once again became bright red and lively. Even the damage to his body from the previous battle began to slowly heal and solidify under the continuous accumulation of fire elements. Based on this trend, the damage caused by the previous battle could be completely repaired in 3 days. The flaming clone controlled the spirit-gathering spell formation while slowly scanning and probing the structure of Flaming Tiger's body. Under normal circumstances, such an operation would undoubtedly provoke Flaming Tiger's hostility and counterattack. However, at this moment, with the help of the spirit-gathering spell formation, Grimm's spiritual force scan finally broke through the distorting force field on the surface of Flaming Tiger's body and gathered some relevant data. Flaming Tiger, high-grade 3 elemental being, fire. Basic stats: strength greater than 21, vitality greater than 30, agility greater than 21, spiritual force greater than 38. Race innate ability. Body of fire. From the basic stats, Flaming Tiger Sindar no longer had an overwhelming advantage against Grimm. Although his body quality was still better than Grimm's, Grimm had a slight advantage over him if he took into account the magic tools and tools he possessed. After all, human magi were not strong in their bodies, but in their brains. B. Flaming Tiger's biological model has been established. Collecting data. The target's biological core data is being protected by a life force field. Data collection failed. Currently scanning the superficial body structure. As a free being, Flaming Tiger Sindar naturally could not let go of his spiritual defenses and allow Grimm to do whatever he wanted. Hence, He could only rely on the AI chips scanning light waves and his own spiritual force to gather the data and information he wanted from the energy aura emitted from Sindar's breathing and energy exchange. Although he could not obtain an extremely accurate and perfect body model, he could at least establish a slightly vague structural model of Flaming Tiger. Chapter 888. 3 days later. In an exquisite and gorgeous bedroom, a charming and beautiful scene was playing out. The naked bodies of a man and a woman were tightly intertwined with each other, and were fighting with all their strength. Amazing, amazing! My dear, you're the best! Freena's naked body was covered in sweat, and her voice was hoarse from shouting. Grim, who was still in high spirits, would cast fire resistance on her from time to time. Then, he would suddenly transform into a tall and powerful Balrog. The rapid changes brought about by the sudden expansion of his body tortured Freena to the point that she was hovering between life and death. The extreme heat that went straight to the bottom of her heart gave her a completely different feeling. If she didn't have the foundation of a Grade 2 Magus, and if it was any other witch or acolyte, they wouldn't be able to withstand this torment from the legendary fire shaman Grim. However, just as the two of them were immersed in their excitement, a ray of red light penetrated into the secret chamber and circled around the red barrier that Grim had set up. It's a message from my partner. Let me hear it. Freena's eyes almost rolled back as she screamed. As Grim opened a small gap in the red barrier, the ray of red light instantly appeared in front of Freena and turned into a strange rune that floated in the air. Freena, I don't care what you're doing right now. Hurry up and get to Mine 3. That Flaming Tiger. A man's anxious and urgent voice rang in their ears as the runes vibrated. However, it was obvious that he was not in a good condition. His words were drowned out by a deafening tiger roar before he could finish his sentence. Under the watchful eyes of the two, the rune quietly dissipated. Damn it, it's that Flaming Tiger. As one of the deacons of Molten City, Freena naturally had the responsibility to ensure the safety of the mines. As soon as she heard that something had gone wrong, she immediately broke free from Grim's embrace and hurriedly put on her robes before leaving. Grim smiled strangely and slowly put on his clothes. He walked out of his residence and slowly made his way to the lower levels of Molten City. Staying in Molten City for 6 or 7 days was enough for Grim to know everything there was to know. As soon as he arrived at the lower level of the Molten City, Grim smelled the thick stench of blood and felt the hot air blowing in his face. There was a hubbub of voices as cries shook the heavens. Large groups of non-humankind slaves struggled to climb out of the tunnels. Their bodies, hands, and faces were covered in scorch marks and big and small blisters. Not only that, but there were also people on fire constantly running out and falling in the underground hall, screaming and wailing. No one could look straight at the scene. Although there were many wizards in the hall, no one paid the slightest attention to the slave miners, let alone cast spells to save them. Their attention was focused on the interior of the mine, and they held tightly onto the instant casting magic wands or witchcraft scrolls in their hands, ready for battle. Seeing Grim rushing down from above, the magi guarding the mine let out a sigh of relief. 2 of them hurriedly welcomed him. Lord Grim, you're here. What's the situation in the mine now? Where are Lord Kiruk and Lord Dorian? Although Grim was well aware of the situation here, he still pretended to be clueless and asked. Lord Kiruk and Lord Dorian have already entered the mine. Lord Freena has just entered as well. A magus in charge quickly explained. Before Lord Kiruk went in, he said that if you and Lord Unide came, please go in and help as soon as possible. Although Molten City had treated Grim well and treated him with great courtesy, he was still not allowed to take a single step into the mine. Hence, Grim was very curious about Mine 3, which was rich in eternal gold ore. As they spoke, the ugly magus Unide also hurried over. Shall we go down and take a look? Grim asked. Unade nodded without hesitation. The 2 of them walked side by side to the entrance of the mine, and were immediately shaken by the surging heat waves. Grim raised his hand and cast a barrier of flames on the two of them. In an instant, the scorching heat wave that was burning his bones and corroding his flesh immediately became as warm as the wind. It felt like a gentle breeze blowing on his body, bringing him a little warmth. In front of the two of them was a huge mine that was more than 4 meters wide and 3 meters tall. There were no decorations on the ground and walls, and what was exposed was volcanic rock that was as hard as steel. However, on the bumpy stone walls, with the illumination of the flames, they could faintly see specks of golden light. It was the metal that was mixed in with the rock. Less than 100 steps into the mine, they were blocked by a thick and heavy pool of dark red magma. It could be seen that the entire lower half of the pit had been soaked in magma at this moment. Just as the two of them hesitated, the magma in front of them began to surge, producing a series of large bubbles. Evidently, the battle inside was still going on, and it seemed to be very intense. "Since we're here, let's go down and take a look." This time, it was Unveil who spoke first. Grim smiled and took the lead. His tall body suddenly ignited with a huge flame, and in the blink of an eye, Grim had already turned into an almost transparent flaming humanoid. Silently, the flaming humanoid stepped into the magma. Not even a single bubble appeared. It was like a drop of water falling into a pool, instantly disappearing without a trace. This was indeed the best battlefield for fire wizards, Unveil silently sighed in her heart. She also cast a barrier to keep the magma outside, and then strode into the depths of the lava tunnel. The dark red magma split into two in front of her, sliding past both sides of the transparent barrier. The high temperature of the magma and the magic barrier collided, causing the female sealer from the south to feel a trace of pressure. The deeper they went into the lava tunnel, the stronger the pressure became, and the more obvious it became. However, Unveil was a grade 3 witch after all, and this little pressure was not enough to stop her. Moreover, the tall flaming humanoid had been advancing rapidly before her, so she did not need to worry about safety at all. She only needed to resist the invasion of the magma with all her might. At a large fork, Grim suddenly stopped. This was also an underground stone hall, originally filled with all kinds of tables and chairs. There was also a small pile of ore in the corner of the hall. Indeed, at this moment, everything was immersed in the boiling magma. Almost all the wooden objects had disappeared, and only a few special items were barely left. Frina struggled to escape from one of the entrances. When she saw Grim's flaming humanoid form, she dashed towards him, while waving her hands in joy. It had only been 15 minutes, but Frina had already sustained serious injuries. Her sexy and hot body was currently covered in scorch marks from the flames, and her beautiful face also had 3 charred black claw marks that ran through her entire face. Her exposed skin was densely covered in large and small blisters and dark spots. Looking at her staggering figure, it seemed that apart from external injuries, there were more serious injuries. Grim stepped forward to support her and patted her body. A strange magical force burst forth, instantly dispelling the flames on Frina's body. Even the fire poison that had invaded Frina's body could be seen with the naked eye turning into sparks, slowly dissipating into the air. A large air bubble instantly wrapped around Frina, floating her in the magma. Lord Kirak is fighting with that flaming tiger in Mine 3. Lord Dorian has gone to activate the spell formation. Lord Grim, you have to help Lord Kirak. Frina looked at Grim as though he was her savior, grabbing his transparent flame hand and shaking it. Got it. You can leave first. Grim nodded slightly, and with a wave of his hand, the air bubble wrapped around Frina and flew out of the tunnel they came from. It seems like Mr. Grim makes friends very quickly. Unveil chuckled, brushing past Grim's body as she entered mine number 3. A faint smile hung on Grim's face as he followed them into the cave. The battle between Kirak and the flaming tiger was about 200 meters below mine 3. Here, in a slightly wider tunnel, 2 Grade 3 magi of different races were fighting to the death. Kirak was currently standing in a corner of the tunnel, his back against the rock wall. He was waving a small and exquisite witchcraft dagger in his hand, defending against the flaming tiger's attacks from all directions. The dark green gem on his forehead was constantly overflowing with a dark green aura, quickly attacking everything around him. In close combat, it was obvious that Kirak was no match for the Grade 3 flaming tiger. However, the flaming tiger seemed to be a little afraid of the dagger in his hand, and did not dare to push it too far. The two of them were in a stalemate as they attacked and dodged each other. Grim and Unide's arrival had obviously alerted the flaming tiger. It roared and raised a huge wave of 3 feet towards the two, while it pounced towards Kirak. Kirak seemed to be prepared for the flaming tiger's attack. The dagger in his hand swayed slightly, and it quickly condensed into a terrifying dark green python, biting towards the flaming tiger. The dark green gem on his forehead rippled, and quickly wrapped around the flaming tiger's body. In the past, the flaming tiger would definitely dodge the attacks of a poison magus. However, for some reason, the flaming tiger did not dodge, and directly collided with the dark green ripple and the terrifying python. Roar! After letting out a deafening roar, the flaming tiger smashed through the ripples and was pierced by the dagger in his shoulder. However, he still ignored it and charged forward, ferociously biting towards Cadillac's head. Kirak's poison magic was mostly useless in the lava, and he was also helpless against the domineering flaming tiger. He could only desperately run towards Grim and Unide. Chapter 889. It was easy to determine the victor in a battle between high-grade magi, but it was even more difficult to determine the life and death of the other. If one did not force the other party into a corner, it would be almost impossible to kill a rank 3 creature. Therefore, when Grim, Kirak, and Unide surrounded the flaming tiger at the same time, it immediately turned tail and ran without hesitation. If this was the original mine, the 3 magi would naturally have the ability to deal with this hateful flaming tiger. However, all the tunnels were filled with thick and tumbling magma. Grim's speed was not affected, but Kirak and Unide could only get further and further away. The 3 humans and 1 tiger dashed left and right in the winding tunnels, playing a game of cat and mouse. Seeing that he could not catch up to the other party, Grim roared and said in a low voice, "You guys continue chasing, I'll intercept it from the front." With that, his flaming body suddenly exploded, and he disappeared. In front of the entrance of a mine in the distance, a huge amount of fire elements quickly gathered, and Grim, who had turned into a flaming humanoid, appeared. Seeing that the path ahead was blocked, the flaming tiger immediately turned around and disappeared into a side tunnel. Mine number 3 had been excavated by Molten City for over 100 years. The tunnels inside were as dense as a spider's web, extending in all directions. Although it was usually convenient for the slave miners to enter and leave, it had now become an escape route for the flaming tiger. Grim used Flame Leap a few times to block the flaming tiger's path, but due to Kirak and Unide's delay, it was all for naught. Originally, Kirak and Unide were waiting for Wizard Dorian to activate the spell formation and trap the flaming tiger in the tunnel. However, after chasing for a quarter of an hour without any signs of the spell formation being activated, they immediately knew that there was a problem with Dorian. While chasing, Kirak tried his best to contact Dorian, but he could not get a response. After a few times, which Unide was also stirred to the point of anger. "Grim, bring me there. We'll split up and intercept." They were all rank 3 magi, but they belonged to different factions, so it was difficult for them to cooperate well. At this moment, Unide was so angry that she made a request to Grim. Otherwise, she would never have let an unfamiliar magus touch her body. "Got it." Grim agreed. In an instant, elements converged and appeared beside Unide. He grabbed her left arm with one hand and used Flame Jump to appear in front of Flaming Tiger. As soon as the Flame Leap ended, Unid used her powerful mind power to get rid of the dislocation caused by the teleportation. The white staff in her hand instantly weaved an airtight golden net towards the flaming tiger that was rushing towards her. Flame Tiger Sindar was immediately shocked. It could clearly sense that the net weaved by the golden threads had a faint aura of planar laws. They looked thin, as if they could tear them apart with a light bump, but Sindar knew that if he were to touch them, he would not be able to escape today. Stepping on fire sprinting, he leaped into the lava and disappeared from where he stood just like Grim. When it reappeared, it was already behind Grim and Unide, continuing to run forward. Even a fire wizard like Grim could use flame jump, so there was no reason that Flaming Tiger could not. Damn it, it was easy to release the golden net, but it was not so easy to retrieve it. It would take at least 2 to 3 seconds for the golden net to return to the staff. During this time, Unide was obviously unable to move. Grim could only give up on her and flash to Kirik's side. He grabbed his body and disappeared again. The flaming tiger seemed to be on guard against Grim's continuous leaps and attacks. As soon as it saw Grim and Kirik disappear, it turned around without hesitation. This made Kirik, who had emerged from the flames, curse. Grim, only you can hold it back now. Don't worry about the two of us. Catch up to it and hold it back. We'll be there soon. At this point, Kirik finally understood what was going on. In such a cruel environment, only Grim could put up a fight against Flaming Tiger. As for the other Magi, they might not even be able to catch up. In order to increase Grim's chances of winning, Kirik waved his hand, and a dark red ball of light was thrown in front of Grim. This is the map of the underground mine. Hold it back for now. Grim's eyes swept across it, and the AI chip's prompt sounded in his mind. Detected data flow interface. After scanning, there are no security issues. Requesting host's instructions to connect? Connect. Grim held the ball of light to his nose and inhaled. The dark red light instantly entered his body. In the next second, the dense 3D map of the underground mine of Molten City immediately appeared in his mind. Got it. Grim was overjoyed. He had been putting on a monkey show with Flaming Tiger Sindar for so long just for this moment. Without a map of the underground mine, he would not be able to know the exact location of Molten City's resource warehouse. Mine? What was there? Freshly excavated ores that had yet to be refined, slag, raw magic gems, and a large pile of useless trash. Even if Grim were to snatch these things back, what use would they be? Therefore, from the moment they arrived at Molten Fire City, Grim had secretly set his sights on the possible resource warehouse in Molten Fire City. With such a large underground mine, the ores excavated every day would definitely be piled up like a mountain. Transporting them outside to be refined, and then transporting them back to Molten City for storage was almost impossible. Thus, there had to be an alchemy laboratory somewhere under Molten City. It was very likely that there were already refined metal ingots stored there. If the raw ores were just some superficial things, then these refined metal ingots were the real meat of Molten City's heart. However, Grim was an outsider. Even if he toured all the famous scenic spots in Molten City, he would not be able to obtain information of this level. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, Grim could not make a move on Freya, so he could only force himself. As he turned into flames and chased Flaming Tiger Sindar through the tunnels, Grim waited for the AI chip's analysis. Since Karlach had handed over the map of the underground mine without any worries, some important information must have been erased from it. However, Grim did not care. With the AI chip, as long as there were any clues on the map, it would be able to help him find them. Mines 1 to 4 were densely packed like a spider web on the map. Outside the spider web, there were a few places that led to the upper levels of Molten City. Apart from the passage for the Magi station there were 3 more secret tunnels. The alchemy laboratory had to process a large amount of raw metal every day, so it was definitely not small. Moreover, it had to be fast and convenient, and there was a secret passage leading to the upper levels. Combining this information with the information he had gathered over the past few days, as well as the map in front of him, it didn't take long for the AI chip to lock onto a blank area on the map. With this information, Grimm immediately sent a message to Flaming Tiger Sindar, who was in the middle of his pursuit. Flaming Tiger Sindar immediately turned around and started fighting with Grimm. Relying on a flame leap, the two of them were like two elusive ghosts, darting left and right in the depths of the underground mine. Finally, they reached the place where Flaming Tiger Sindar and Grimm rushed into the sea of lava, fighting as they ran further and further away. The shock waves from the depths of the lava almost turned the area upside down. Karlach and Unide couldn't help but look at each other in dismay when they reached the opening. Keep chasing? With their speed in the sea of lava, it was impossible for them to catch up to the two monsters fighting. Give up? Grimm was fighting for them, but as the master of Molten City, he had to give up early. Lord Unide, I'll have to trouble you to provide support for Grimm. I need to go back and see what's going on with Dorian. There seems to be some problems over there. Karlach immediately made up his mind. Don't worry, Lord Unide. The thing that Molten City promised you, no matter the outcome of the battle, will be delivered to you. We, Molten City, still have this bit of credibility. Since Karlach had already said this much, Unide naturally had no objections. Moreover, with Grimm holding off the Flaming Tiger, the risk she had to bear was still within her control. It was worth the risk. All right, don't forget what you said. After agreeing to Magus Karlach, the staff in Unide's hand released a golden halo, blocking the lava outside. She then quickly rushed into the depths of the lava sea with this layer of light. Although she couldn't see anything here, and her power of the will couldn't reach far, she could still follow the traces of the battle from afar. However, unbeknownst to her, at this moment, it was no longer Sindar and Grimm who were fighting her in the depths of the lava sea. Instead, it was Sindar and Grimm's flame doppelganger. She was quite far away anyway, and with Sindar's rank 3 power as a cover, she didn't have to worry that the flame clone would reveal her true rank 2 power. As for the real Grimm, he had already turned into a ball of flame and sneaked back into the mine. He avoided Unide and Karlach and quickly moved towards the location he had locked onto. Chapter 890. Molten Fire City, the control center of the underground mine's defensive spell formation. Dozens of magi were scattered all over the hall, with injuries ranging from light to heavy. At the center of the hall where the spell formation was located, the spell formation that was originally engraved on the floor had been destroyed beyond recognition, and could no longer function. As for Formation Master Dorian, he was covered in blood as he lay beside a broken stone pillar, silently receiving treatment from Witch Freena. Once Wizard Kirak stepped in, his expression changed. What happened? Who ambushed this place? Kirak roared loudly. It's that flaming tiger. Dorian endured the pain and stuttered. His left leg seemed to have been smashed by something, turning into a pile of meat paste. Black blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose like snake. It was obvious that his internal injuries were not light either. Flaming tiger? Kirak's mouth twitched and he looked like he had seen a ghost. How could it be that flaming tiger? It has been fighting with us in the underground mine. Dorian looked extremely dispirited after being injured, but after hearing Kirak's words, he roared in anger. I was going to ask you what happened. Why did we get attacked by that flaming tiger the moment I brought people here? And that bastard summoned a lava giant and smashed the control hall into pieces. Kirak's face was full of disbelief. He turned to Freena and asked sternly, Did you see it too? I saw it. Freena hurriedly nodded her head, but then she hesitated. But what? I keep feeling that this flaming tiger looks the same as the one from before, and its aura is similar as well. But it doesn't feel like the same one. Dorian also spoke weakly. I have the same feeling too. It seems like this flaming tiger is slightly weaker. But the lava giant it summoned is exactly the same as before. Kirak inhaled a breath of cold air. Flaming tigers. More than one? If there was more than one flaming tiger, then why did they not show themselves in the past? While he was hesitating, the snake eye ring on Kirak's right index finger suddenly flashed with a faint red light. This was the communication ring he used to communicate with some of his trusted subordinates in Molten City. He stroked the snake eye ring with his finger and raised it to his mouth. Antok, don't bother me if there's nothing important. I'm here. Sir, please come quickly. The laboratory and the warehouse have been invaded. A man's hoarse shout came from the other side of the phone as soon as the snake eye ring connected. Behind his voice, there were also temporary screams that rose and fell one after another. Vaguely, one could also hear the familiar roar of a tiger. Cadillac's expression instantly changed. Dorian and Freena, who were close to him and heard the contents of the communication, changed their expressions. No matter how heavy the losses in the underground mines were, even if all the slave miners were killed, they would not be able to make them even bat an eyelid. As long as Molten Inferno City was there, as long as they were there, everything would return to normal. At most, it would only cause Molten Fire City to lose half a month's worth of ores. As the deputy city lords of Molten Fire City, they could still afford such a small loss. However, the secret laboratory and warehouse was a place they could not afford to lose. If anything happened there, even the city lord who had been in seclusion for 10 years would be forced out of the mountain. As for the consequences of disturbing the city lord, just thinking about it made them tremble in fear. Dorian, who had originally wanted to return to his residence to recuperate, immediately pulled out a magic dagger from his waist. With a flash of cold light, he cut off Freena's left leg. Strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out from the wound. Freena screamed in pain, her face pale and her body trembling. However, she did not dare to move an inch. Dorian pressed Freya's broken leg against his own. He took out a bottle of purple potion and gently sprinkled it on the joint of the leg. A faint white smoke rose, and a large amount of transparent mucus appeared at the wound. It was a disgusting sight. However, with a flick of his fingers, Dorian was able to stand up and walk normally. Bring Freena back for treatment. Dorian summoned a magus from Molten Fire City and handed Freena over to him, then hurried to the secret area with Kalak. Dorian questioned in a low voice as the two of them moved quickly through the tunnel. How many resources are stored there? Kalak replied with a pale face. Usually, they are sent to the City Lord's Wizard's Pagoda once every 3 months. The City Lord's Wizard's Pagoda has not been opened for the past 10 years. All the resources are stored there. Hearing this reply, Dorian felt the world spin around him, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Don't worry. That flame tiger is just a wild beast. How big can its appetite be? How much can it take away if it eats to its heart's content? As for the portion that's missing, we'll make up for it with gritted teeth and get the slaves to work overtime to mine. Kalak continued to console himself along the way. However, when he and Dorian arrived at the secret laboratory along a tunnel that was paved with rails, it had already become a bloody purgatory on Earth. In the large alchemy laboratory, there were collapsed and broken experiment tables and glassware everywhere. Not a single alchemist who had been working in the laboratory could be seen. However, on the clean floor of the laboratory, there were many scorch marks left behind by the flames. At the center of the scorch marks was a pile of black powder. These were the only things left behind by the alchemists. The few metal golems that were in charge of guarding the laboratory had already been blown to pieces, and were scattered all over the laboratory. As for the 2 level 2 magi who were stationed here, they were nowhere to be found. They were probably dead. The 2 of them did not stop there, and madly rushed to the warehouse behind the laboratory. Just as they rushed into the warehouse, the 2 of them saw a terrifying flame tiger standing proudly with its head held high. The flame tiger was leisurely swallowing a storage ring into its stomach. Seeing the two magi rush over, the flame tiger cracked a smile that was almost human-like, then instantly disappeared in a sea of flames. With the control center of the underground wizard formation destroyed, the ability to restrict long-distance teleportation had been lost. Even if the two magi hated the flame tiger, they could not stop it from leaving. After the flame tiger left, the two magi looked around and saw the empty warehouse. They could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Things had gotten out of hand. Deep within the lava sea, Sindar's lair, the flame tiger appeared in a burst of dense flames, and on the floor of the lair, a glowing red positioning rune could be seen clearly. The flame tiger chuckled, and with a strange distortion, it slowly turned back into Grimm's appearance. These days, the fire clone had been silently investigating the flame tiger Sindar's basic data and body structure. For this, it had even constructed a model of the flame tiger that was 80% similar to the original. Grimm had used his flame-shaping ability to transform himself into the flame tiger Sindar based on this model. With this appearance and the fire spells he used, it would be difficult for normal magi to differentiate the real from the fake. Before doing all this, Grimm had secretly contacted Alice, who was far away in the north, and had her blur the branch of his destiny. This way, even if someone discovered some flaws, it would be difficult to use prophecy spells to find out the truth of the matter. Since he had returned safely, he naturally had to put on a good show. Grimm closed his eyes and sensed for a moment, then turned around and rushed out of the lair, rushing towards a certain direction in the depths of the lava sea. The battle in the depths of the lava sea continued. Waves of vibrations stirred up the lava sea, but every time Unit arrived at the scene, she would find that the two fellows had already run somewhere else, and a new wave of vibrations would be transmitted from afar. Unit could only grit her teeth and continue chasing. Grimm secretly returned to the battlefield and greeted the flame tiger Sindar. He spat out a storage ring and threw it to the fire clone. The two exchanged positions, and Grimm continued to fight bitterly with Sindar, while the rank 2 fire clone used the vibrations of the lava sea to escape far away. This time, the man and the tiger did not continue to teleport, but instead fiercely fought on the spot. This was the first time Grimm showed his true strength. Along with the ripples of his soul, pieces of strange sorcery equipment slowly emerged on his body. On the head of the flaming humanoid, an exquisite and gorgeous magic crown appeared. At the same time, a pair of magic armlets with intricate patterns appeared on his arms, and a dazzling halo shone from his waist. Powerful magic aura also appeared on his feet and neck. Moreover, these magic equipment seemed to be closely related to Grimm's soul. With his mind as the core, a complete set of magic energy was constructed. This was a magic set. Unit, who had rushed over, almost cried out in surprise. She looked at Grimm's tall figure with eyes full of envy. And this was not the end. On Grimm's shoulder, a strange wooden doll with dense runes carved all over its body appeared. It let out a creepy laugh towards the flame tiger. Another soul equipment. Moreover, it had already gained sentience and had the ability to transform its body. At this moment, Unit was not just envious, but jealous that could not be concealed. Chapter 891. According to their previous agreement, Sindar and Grimm would have to fight. Furthermore, they needed this battle to put an end to the whole matter. Therefore, after seeing Grimm's actions, Sindar also focused his attention and waited with all his might. However, when it saw the powerful magic tools emerging from Grimm's body one after another, Sindar was no longer so sure. Once upon a time, in the fire elemental plane, he had toyed with Grimm like a cat toying with a mouse. His opponent's every move could not escape his control. But today it was still the same fire wizard. When a powerful aura shot out from his opponent's body, Sindar could not remain calm. It had only been 10 years since then, but Grimm seemed to have changed into a completely different person. Had he already grown to such an extent? Just as Sindar was in shock, a flaming armor formed around Grimm's body. It was covered in magical runes, faintly emitting a powerful aura that could shake one's heart. Sindar was not to be outdone by Grimm's powerful aura. With a few roars, his entire body rapidly expanded, as if he was filled with air. His body, which was originally only 3 meters long, had now expanded to more than 5 meters. His violent aura also expanded along with it. Seeing that the two in the distance were already fighting with their lives on the line, Unid, who had sneaked to the side, hurriedly hid her figure and silently began to prepare the sealing spell she was good at. She knew that her arrival could not be hidden from the flame tiger's senses. However, as long as she did not get too close to the battlefield, the flame tiger would not be willing to run away in front of a human wizard. As long as she grasped this mentality, she might have a chance to capture this flame tiger today. However, just as this thought surfaced in her mind, a vast and powerful will descended upon the area. For a split second, the raging sea of lava seemed to pause for an indiscernible moment, before continuing to surge forward majestically. The 3 people present were instantly locked on by that will. A second ago, Flame Tiger Sindar was still ferocious and eager to get into action. In the next second, he had already retracted all of his aura. Like a frightened little beast, he tucked his tail between his legs and quickly escaped into the depths of the lava sea. Looking at the way it was fleeing, it was not going to turn back this time. Grimm, who had just finished preparing for battle, lost his opponent, could not help but be stunned. His burning will to fight came into contact with that majestic will, and he instantly withered as if he was electrocuted. Rank 4. This was the spiritual perception of a rank 4 magus. In less than 0.1 seconds, Grimm understood the source of this magnificent will. He hurriedly withdrew his mental fluctuations and guarded his mind, not daring to compete with that will anymore. That majestic willpower was like a flowing spiritual sea, quickly sweeping across the entire area. When his spiritual tentacles caught the traces of flames left behind by Flame Tiger Sindar's escape, a cold and angry snort vaguely came from the void. However, the sea of consciousness soon shifted its attention to Grimm and Unid, with Grimm taking the majority of the attention. "You are Cadillac's guests?" Soundlessly, a wave of spiritual energy seeped into their minds, causing a cold and hoarse voice of a man to ring out in their heads. "Greetings, Lord Alfred. I am Unide from the Hone family." Although Unide had always been arrogant, she did not dare to show the slightest disrespect in front of a reclusive Tier 4 magus. When she answered the magus's question, she was also very respectful, like an apprentice meeting an official magus. "Greetings, Lord Alfred. I'm Grimm from the Crimson family." Grimm also hurriedly bowed respectfully. Although the other party did not actually come here, his powerful willpower covered the area, and everything he did could be seen at a glance. Although Grimm had never seen the city master of Molten City before, he had done some research before coming here. To be honest, Wizard Alfred was a powerful magus who had struggled his way up from the grassroots. He was an expert in soundwave spells, and his innate talent was rather unorthodox. However, this did not stop him from steadily progressing step by step, spending 600 years to successfully become a rank 4 magus. At this stage, normal magus resources were mostly useless to him. The resources he needed could only be slowly gathered from the tens of thousands of planes. Although it was rumored that he was living in seclusion within the wizard's pagoda, it was still a mystery whether he was actually there. After all, many high-level magi would set up a soul imprint in their private wizard's pagoda, then sneak out to explore the endless plains. The reason why he hid his tracks was to prevent his enemies from coming to seek revenge when he was not in the wizard's pagoda. This way there were good and bad situations. His enemies would not dare attack him without knowing where he was going. However, if they were to find themselves in a dangerous area or ancient ruins while exploring the plains, it would be extremely difficult to find someone to save them. Hence, in the middle of the continent, where there were many powerful magi, there would often be powerful magi who went into seclusion for decades. Only when the family caught wind of this and tried to barge into the wizard's pagoda would they discover that the sole imprint he left behind had already been destroyed. Once news of this spread, it could cause a drastic change in the family's ranking. After all, many magus families were supported by a powerful core magus. If something were to happen to this core magus, the entire family would collapse. This could be seen from the vampire-born Vic family. No matter how much the family suffered, as long as the old vampire Heinz Vic was still around. As long as the old vampire Heinz Vic was still around, the family would one day rise again. But Heinz Vic had become a captive of the Crimson family. Vic became a captive of the Crimson family. Grimm didn't even need to do anything. The other vampire families that were eyeing them covetously would instantly cause the Vic family to fall apart. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Hence, the city master of Molten City, a powerful level 4 magus, had not shown his face for more than a decade. Grimm had even guessed that he might be trapped somewhere in the plain. However, now that he sensed the vast spirit sea pressing towards him, he immediately dispelled any thoughts that he shouldn't have. He obediently put away all his pride and offered his respect to the other party. A mutant beast from the fire elemental plane? Haha, I didn't expect my Molten City to be so lively while I was away. It's been hard on the two of you. Come back first. I don't think that mutant beast would dare to appear again. Wizard Alfred's cold voice rumbled like thunder in the sea of lava, causing Grimm and Unit to shiver in fear. Grimm was even more thankful that he had already placed a large amount of resources in the storage ring on his fire clone. If the loot was still on him, it would be very difficult to hide it from this powerful level 4 magus all-pervasive spiritual sense. Although the things hidden in the storage ring could not be detected, it might work on normal wizards. However, it might not work on an old monster like a level 4 magus. Who knew if this level 4 magus had the strange ability to detect Eternium and Kaira's alloy from afar? If he found out that Grimm had something like that on him, it would be very difficult for Grimm to step out of Molten City. After receiving the invitation from the city master of Molten City, Grimm and Unid looked at each other and hurriedly returned to the underground tunnel. At the entrance of the underground tunnel, Wizard Kirak had been waiting for them for a long time. Seeing that the two of them had successfully returned, Wizard Kirak stepped forward and said with a smile, "Please follow me. Our city master wants to see you too." The city master, who had not shown his face for 10 years, had suddenly returned. This was supposed to be a great thing, but there was not a single trace of happiness on Kirak's face. Even the smile just now was very forced. Which Unid didn't know the truth, so she was a little confused, but she didn't ask anything. Grimm, on the other hand, pretended he didn't know anything. It was a special stone room. The stone room was very simple, and Wizard Alfred was wearing a gray robe and sitting on a stone chair. The layout of the stone room was simple and plain. Wizard Alfred was wearing a gray wizard robe and sitting on a stone chair. When the few of them stepped into the room, Wizard Alfred opened his eyes and looked at Grimm and Unid. Both of them couldn't help but sweat. At their level, a rank higher meant that their power would increase by 10 or 20 times. Even a simple gaze from the other party was enough to make the two of them feel a powerful force pressing down on them, let alone a duel. Also, this kind of spiritual pressure could ignore defense and magic resistance. It was only related to the toughness of the individual's spiritual force. Therefore, Grimm and Unid stood in front of each other, as if they were sitting on pins and needles. They felt extremely uncomfortable. Grimm also wanted to peek at Wizard Alfred's appearance, but his spiritual sense and the A.I. chip's detection ripples were suppressed by an invisible force inside his body, so he couldn't extend them out. Under this kind of situation, he could only rely on his naked eyes to see what was happening around him. It was a pity that Wizard Alfred's face was covered in a ball of light, so Grim could not see his true appearance. Wizard Alfred didn't care about Grim's spying at all. Actually, he didn't need to care. He looked at the two of them for a moment and finally opened his mouth coldly. "You've done well today. Carrack, you can treat your mission as completed. Send them off after you receive your reward." "Yes." Carrack, who was following behind them, quickly replied. But we still haven't caught that flaming tiger?" Unid was slightly stunned. Grim's expression was also one of astonishment. "It's nothing, it's just a small exotic beast. Our Molten Fire City will take care of it ourselves. You two can leave after you receive your reward. Molten Fire City still has some private matters to take care of, so I won't keep you two any longer." Up to this point, the two wizards could tell from the rank 4 wizard's words that he wanted them to leave. Naturally, they couldn't force them to stay. Although they didn't know why they were being chased away halfway through the mission, they could guess that something must have happened in Molten Fire City. Chapter 892. Molten Fire City, in a secret stone room. After sending off Grim and Unid, Carrack turned around and returned to the secret room. Wizard Alfred, on the other hand, was deep in thought with his brows furrowed. "My lord, I have mishandled this matter. Please punish me." Kylack had a vexed expression as he admitted his mistake. Wizard Alfred waved his hand and interrupted impatiently, "Of course it's your fault. It's just an elemental beast. Even though it's a bit cunning, do you think we can't handle it with the power of Molten City? Why would we let you go to the Wind of Freedom and let everyone know about it? You even brought 2 unknown people into Molten City." Carrack quickly lowered his head to accept the lesson. Even if the mine is affected, it's just a little less resource income. But what if these 2 guys are spies sent by someone else? If the secret experiments I've placed in the upper levels of Molten City are leaked, can you bear the responsibility?" "My lord, I didn't issue the mission the normal way because I was worried about spies. Instead, I personally found 2 suitable candidates. I've already checked their backgrounds, and there's nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" Wizard Alfred laughed coldly. "If there's nothing wrong, why would they cause such a huge commotion? Even our resource warehouse was robbed?" "My lord, you mean, there's something wrong with these 2? There's nothing wrong with the witch, but there might be something wrong with the wizard. I have a feeling that his motives are not simple. It's as if he's up to something. But I didn't find anything wrong with him. Otherwise, why would I let him leave alive?" Carrack was stunned and whispered, "My lord, why don't I send someone to investigate him?" Alfred thought for a moment and shook his head. "That's fine. The experiments in the Wizard's Pagoda are nearing completion and need someone to protect them. I can't leave for now. Send someone to spread the news and buy some Eternium or at a high price. See if he has any reaction." "Yes, I'll arrange it right away." If it's really him, I'll personally uproot his family and make him regret everything he's done in Molten City today." A month later, Grim successfully returned to the Flame Monarch's Wizard Pagoda. He had just entered the Wizard's Pagoda when he impatiently dismissed the crowd and arrived in front of the flame altar alone. He waved his hand and lit up the symbol formation hub at the top of the altar. As strange flame ripples spread in the air, Grim stretched out his right index finger and made a cut on his left palm. Crimson blood flowed out of the cut and dripped onto the flame ripples. With the guidance of this drop of origin blood, the flame altar brought his consciousness across millions of miles in an instant, arriving at a certain place in the underground lava sea. In the next second, as the flame altar trembled slightly, a dark red void rift suddenly opened above the altar, and 2 figures of different sizes emerged from it. It was Flame Tiger Sindar and his fire doppelganger that had been roaming around the bottom of the lava sea. "Kid, after holding it in for so long, you can finally divide the spoils now." Flame Tiger Sindar shouted impatiently as soon as he came out of the void crack. Yang Ling had to admit that Flame Tiger Sindar was trustworthy as an ally. Grimm's fire doppelganger was only at the middle level of level 2. Even after following him for so long, it did not directly try to snatch the storage ring. This made Grimm especially satisfied. The fire doppelganger came to Grimm's side, took out the storage ring from its mouth, and threw it into his hand. It then knocked into his body and merged with him once again. Grimm pinched the storage ring and smiled. With a light wave, the items inside instantly filled the secret room. There were close to 100 wooden boxes of the same size. Flame Tiger Sindar rushed forward and smashed the first wooden box with a claw. Clatter! Several rectangular metal ingots fell to the ground, letting out a crisp metallic sound. The metal ingots were abnormally heavy, and when their surfaces came into contact with the free elemental particles in the air, they immediately dispersed into tiny rainbows. It's magic iron alloy. Another box was opened, and within it were rows of purple metal ingots with a faint purple glow flowing on them. Seeing such pure Eternium ingots, Flame Tiger Sindar immediately pounced forward excitedly, grabbing them and stuffing them into its stomach. As a fire creature, it did not have the habit of using space items. When it came across something it liked, it would always stuff it with food, using its huge stomach as a storage bag. Lord Sindar. Grimm, who was standing at the side, could not stand it anymore and called out softly. What? Sindar looked at Grimm nervously. I've taken such a big risk, can't I take something from you? Grimm shook his head speechlessly, then extended his hand and handed over a storage ring. Since we've worked well together, then I'll give this storage ring to you. With it, you can take whatever you need from here. Really? Really? Sindar looked at Grimm suspiciously, thought for a moment, then grabbed the storage ring and carefully took away the 3 boxes of Eternium ingots. It knew in its heart that even though the human wizard was being nice, if one was greedy enough to cross the bottom line of his heart, it would be difficult for one to walk out of this private wizard's pagoda. Thus, it was not greedy, and only took enough for its own use. Grimm, on the other hand, took the rest of the wooden boxes. With just a simple entry and exit, the AI chip had already calculated all the Eternium ingot. There were a total of 96 wooden boxes. There were 13 boxes of Eternium ingots, 390 pieces, 120 tons, 32 boxes of Quilla's alloy, 960 pieces, 270 tons, 24 boxes of magic iron alloy, 720 pieces, 117 tons, 7 boxes of secret silver, 210 pieces, 300 kilograms, 5 boxes of fine gold, 150 pieces, 380 tons. The boxes of Eternium ingots that had gone through multiple refinements were mostly high-grade magical metals. They were also high-grade resources that were hard to find on the market. If they were released, Grimm and the Crimson family would not be affected by the lack of magical crystals for the next few decades. Grimm did not care too much about the other magical metals, but the Quilla's alloy immediately made him beam with joy. With these Quilla's alloys, there was a possibility that the large magical weapons of war in the Goblin Plain could be completed. Every additional magical furnace meant the formation of a magical weapon army. But now was not the time to celebrate. Grimm looked at Sindar and asked curiously, Sindar, now that you have this batch of Eternium ingots, where do you plan to go to digest them? If you don't mind, why don't you stay in my Flame Monarch's wizard pagoda for a while? No. Sindar rejected him immediately. The reason I came to the sorcerer world is to find a suitable metal that can solidify my body. Now that I have these Eternium ingots, I don't need anything else. It's best for me to return to the fire elemental plane. All right. Even though Grimm did not achieve his goal, he did not care about such a small problem. Why don't I open a plane passage and send you back? Flame Tiger Sindar laughed. Don't forget, I'm a creature from the fire elemental plane. I don't need your help to return to my origin. Next time you come to the fire elemental plane, you can look for me. With a leap, it reached the top of the flame altar. Using the elemental undulations that had yet to completely dissipate, its two sharp tiger claws rapidly attacked, and actually tore open a spatial crack leading to the fire elemental plane. It drilled into the crack and disappeared without a trace. After he left, a palm-sized model of a dark red flame tiger appeared on the empty space of the altar. Grim walked over and picked it up, sensing a trace of the flame tiger Sindar's aura. It seemed like this was the communication token left behind by Sindar. If he really returned to the fire elemental plane, it would be much easier to find Sindar based on his aura. After sending Sindar off, Grim waved his hand and closed the flame altar before returning to his residence. At the entrance of his residence, the scarlet butler, Gargamel, had been waiting for a long time. "What's the matter?" The moment he sat down, Grim asked curiously. The Scarlet family had developed to its current scale, and the number of magi and acolytes in the family had reached 300 to 400. They also had over 100 secular territories and resource points. The management of such a large family was naturally handed over to Magus Gargamel and Merrill to take care of. Generally speaking, Gargamel had always been in charge of the family matters in the Eloise area, while Merrill was in charge of the White Tower in the north. Most of the time, Grim had become a hands-off boss and did not involve himself in the family matters. To him, establishing the Scarlet family was to settle down a group of people he cared about, and also to gather some resources for himself. Wasting time on managing the family was something Grim was not willing to do. Hence, out of his own conscience and selfishness, Grim had delegated all the authority to manage the family matters to Gargamel and Merrill. He was only in charge of gathering the core strength of the family. Hence, under normal circumstances, Gargamel would not trouble Grim with some ordinary family matters. For him to suddenly come here today, there must be something that he could not decide on or handle. Gargamel hesitated for a moment, but could not help but speak. "My lord, it's about Amelia." "Amelia? What happened to her?" Grim asked in surprise. In the Flame Monarch's Wizard's Pagoda, everyone knew that Amelia was the apple of Gargamel and the forest demon Ava's eye. She was practically in their mouths, afraid to melt, and in their hands, afraid to touch. With the two of them protecting her, what could possibly happen to her? "My lord, Amelia is fine." But what? Hurry up and tell me, I don't have the time to play riddles with you." Chapter 893. After not seeing her for a few months, Amelia had become even prettier. Compared to Mary's hotness and Alice's mysteriousness, Amelia had a strange and ethereal air to her. From her appearance, Amelia looked like a girl of about 14 or 15 years of age. She had a head of soft green hair and delicate features that always carried a charming smile. She wore a long robe woven from green vines and had a beautiful garland on her head. Her hands were bare, and her fingers were long and slender. Her long nails were smeared with oily green impatiens juice, making her look seductive and beautiful. As her temperament matured, Amelia was no longer as out of place as she was when she was young. She was very quiet, respectfully greeting Grim as soon as she entered, and then quietly stood behind Gargamel, not saying much. This seemed to be inconsistent with her past personality. The beautiful Amelia and the old and balding Gargamel stood side by side, making it hard to believe that they were father and daughter. The contrast in appearance was simply too great. Grim narrowed his eyes. Ever since Amelia entered the room, the AI chip had been silently scanning her body. Due to the difference of 2 ranks, the natural barrier around Amelia's body that was permeated with the fragrance of plants could not block the AI chip's detection. The feedback caused Grim's brows to furrow. Beep. Scanning target's basic biology name. Amelia race. Unknown creature rank. Peak of rank 1 profession. Nature megastats. Strength 6, Vitality 9, Agility 7, Spiritual Force 19. A series of data was gathered together, and a model of a young and beautiful nature magus was constructed in Grimm's mind. However, when the model scanned Amelia's legs, it turned into a pile of messy and disorderly code, as if there was something there that was blocking the AI chip's detection. Grimm smiled warmly. "Amelia, I heard from your father that you seem to have met with some problems recently?" Amelia stood up and rolled her eyes at Gargamel, saying indifferently, "It's not a big problem. It's just that there's a problem with the fusion of my body. I can solve it myself." Grimm's smile became even more gentle. "Then, can I have a look?" Amelia smiled wryly. She knew she could not reject the patriarch's request, so she could only lift the hem of her green robe. Unexpectedly, what came into view was not a pair of beautiful young girl's feet, but a clump of intertwined octopus tentacle-like roots. The roots were not thick, but they were so dense and numerous that it was dazzling. They clustered around each other, twisting and wriggling like a terrifying 100-clawed octopus. What surprised Grimm the most was that the surface of the roots were translucent, and he could clearly see the greenish-white liquid flowing within. As they wriggled and stretched, specks of natural light hovered around the roots. If one ignored their appearance, they were as beautiful as a dream garden. This plant transformation started from the calf. The upper half was still the fair and plump thigh of a human girl, but from the knee onwards, it actually split into hundreds of strange plant roots that intertwined together. However, these tentacles were obviously under Amelia's control and did not affect her daily life or walking. Did this happen when Ava was growing up? Grimm tilted his head and asked Gargamel. The wrinkled Gargamel shook his head and sighed bitterly, obviously very worried about Amelia's physical condition. After all, this plant transformation had already started for some time. In the beginning, only the feet were affected, and they split into terrifying roots. While Gargamel and Ava were frantically looking around for the reason, this plant transformation had already extended to the knees. Now, some thick green veins had also appeared on Amelia's originally fair and plump thighs, obviously on the eve of the transformation. If they did not find a way to stop this plant transformation, it was obvious that Amelia would completely become a non-human within a year. Although the sorcerer world did not reject foreign sorcerers, these foreign sorcerers had never been able to integrate into the mainstream sorcerers who were mainly humans. This also caused their future growth path to be much more difficult than normal human sorcerers in terms of acquiring knowledge and trading resources. Since even the forest demon Ava felt that the current Amelia was a little strange, it was sufficient to show that the little girl's growth had far exceeded the scope of their control and understanding. Otherwise, with their love for Amelia, they would not have come here to ask Grimm for help. But compared to Gargamel's extreme fear and confusion, Amelia herself was quite calm. Because of this, Grimm had no choice but to chase Gargamel out and have an open and honest conversation with Amelia. After waiting for Gargamel to leave hesitantly, Grimm coldly stared at Amelia, his face revealing a trace of a cold smile. "Gargamel is my subordinate, and Ava has also served the Crimson family for so many years. As the head of the family, it is necessary for me to protect their interests. Are you Amelia or something else? You'd better tell me the truth. Otherwise..." At this point, a faint red burning domain had already enveloped Amelia. The lingering flames spiraled 2 meters behind her, the flames surging and spitting out tongues of flame, as if choosing a person to devour. With Amelia's strength only at grade 1, as long as the burning domain closed, she would not even be able to withstand 3 fingers before turning into a puff of flying ash. "I'm Amelia." The green-haired, purple-eyed girl looked straight into Grimm's eyes and said sincerely. "Then release the soul protection. Let me personally check." Fused with Yala's soul. "Please believe me, I am the daughter of Gargamel and Ava." It's just that. I've fused with another foreign soul." Fused. Grimm repeated, his eyes narrowing even more. Yes, it's a fusion, not a devouring. Amelia emphasized again. Release your soul, I need to check it myself. Amelia naturally knew that this was something she had to experience, so she could only helplessly release her soul and allow Grimm's scorching spiritual force to extend into her spiritual sea. It was as if a red-hot iron rod had been inserted into her brain and was stirring with all its might. Amelia's body trembled, and her eyes rolled back as she was tormented to the point of hovering between life and death. However, she could only forcefully endure it, allowing Grimm to slowly search her spiritual sea for what he wanted. This kind of painful experience was not something a regular person could endure. Hence, most spells that searched for knowledge and extracted memories would cause irreversible damage to the target's mind. Even if the spell was successful, the target would either go mad or die. Fortunately, Amelia was a magus, and her mental fortitude was 100 times that of a regular person after decades of training. Coupled with Grimm's gentle movements, she did not turn into an idiot. When Grimm carefully withdrew his spiritual force from Amelia's spiritual sea, she was already drenched in cold sweat, lying on the floor and twitching non-stop. Now. You believe me, right now? It was a short sentence, but Amelia's words sounded disjointed and weak. She lay on the floor, her body curled up like a lobster. Hundreds of gossamer thin roots wriggled and twisted around her. Grimm muttered to himself silently. The green-haired, purple-eyed girl was right. In this body there were indeed two independent souls. Now, however, they had fused together perfectly, and it was impossible to distinguish them. It was a fusion, not a devouring. According to what she said, one of the souls should be Amelia, the mixed-blood descendant of Gargamel and Ava, while the other was a strange foreign soul, Yala. If Yala's soul directly devoured Amelia, Grimm would undoubtedly kill her without hesitation. But now, the two souls had fused together. Amelia was Yala and Yala was Amelia. There was no longer any distinction between the two. This was going to be a little difficult. While Grimm was examining the green-haired, purple-eyed girl's soul, there was a huge commotion outside his residence. It seemed like someone was madly attacking the door of his residence, causing the door to crackle under the protection of the defensive spell formation. Grimm hesitated for a moment, then finally waved his hand to release the defensive spell formation. With a loud bang, the door opened, and the forest demon Ava rushed in with disheveled hair. Traces of blood could be seen on her body. This was the damage caused by the defensive spell formation's counterattack. If Grimm had not noticed it early and cut off the defensive spell formation's counterattack, her injuries would have been even more serious. How could the residence of a Grade 3 Magus be so easily broken into? As soon as she barged into the residence and saw Amelia twitching on the floor, the forest demon Ava pounced on her and hugged her tightly, roaring at Grimm at the top of her lungs. "What did you do to her? If anything happens to my daughter, I'll fight you to the death." Gargamel rushed into the residence with a bloody nose and swollen face, fiercely grabbing onto Ava. "Don't be rash. Today's matter. I was the one who begged the Lord." With a muffled bang, a dark green tree whip made Gargamel somersault, causing him to fall to the ground, unable to get up. "If anything happens to our daughter, you won't be able to live either." Grimm leisurely sat on a chair, silently watching this family farce. In the end, the one who stopped Ava was the green-haired, purple-eyed Amelia. Chapter 894. Goblin Plain, Floating Mech City. This was a huge alchemy laboratory located under the Wizard Tower. In the gigantic assembly workshop that occupied an area of 13,000 square meters, there were many scaffolding that looked like a beehive. Countless gnome engineers and technicians were climbing up and down, either welding, cutting, or hammering, making the place look like a noisy market. Surrounded by the dense scaffolding, one could vaguely see the outline of a huge magical machine. It was a huge magical golem dragon made entirely of metal. Its entire body was 100 meters long from head to tail, and it was supported by 6 pairs of thick, solid metal legs. Every detail on its body was exquisitely carved and lifelike. Due to the large amount of fire-stained copper used to create this huge golem dragon, the surface of its metal surface was a strange dark red. If one hit the metal shell, there would even be dazzling sparks that would ignite the clothes of the attacker. Therefore, there would be 1 or 2 emergency alarms on the huge scaffolding every few minutes, and the goblin sprinklers that were on standby would rush over to extinguish the fire. When Grimm arrived at the workshop with the Wind Wizard, Desira, and a group of goblin engineers, he saw such a chaotic and noisy scene. A huge golem dragon that was 100 meters long. Grimm squinted his eyes, silently observing and pondering. One had to know that even true dragons that reached 100 meters in length were existences like ancient dragons or primordial dragons, and their starting point was at least tier 6. However, this group of weak goblins the size of beans could create such a huge magical machine with exquisite and perfect mechanical forging technique. Grimm could not help but look at them in a different light. However, even if the goblins had gathered all the high-level technicians and engineers in the entire plane, this was the limit of what they could do. Without the magic furnace technology provided by Grimm, even if all of them worked together and installed coal-powered steam engines in the golem dragon's internal space, it would still be difficult to operate such a huge magical machine. Ever since Grimm, the leader of the Crimson Tribe, arrived at the Goblin Plain and the floating mech city, the most intelligent and experienced goblin engineer had been following closely behind him, muttering lack of funds, many injuries, and lack of apprentices like a monk chanting scriptures. Of course, the thing he was most talking about was the large magic furnace on the blueprint. According to the current golem dragon's weight of 400 tons, the large magic furnace would need to be at least a third of the power of the super magic furnace that the brain monster Gaz Ruvi had fused with in order to be able to power such a huge golem. If one were to consider the numerous magical weapons that would be installed in the later stages of the project, perhaps the power output of the newly built large-scale magical furnace would not be lower than the super magical furnace. As for the super magical furnace, Grimm borrowed a rare mana source to succeed in building it. If he wanted to build another magic furnace that was on par with the super magic furnace, he would have to use even more Kalos alloy. Therefore, while Grimm was inspecting the golem dragon, he was also quickly calculating the consumption of Kalos alloy in his mind. He had obtained 270 tons of Kalos alloy this time. According to the AI chip's latest optimized model, it was enough to build 67 spatial furnaces or 26 magic furnaces. However, if he wanted to build a large magic furnace, he would probably only be able to build 3 to 4 of them. When he thought about the patrol mothership, Goblin Dragon Spear, Spatial Ripper, and the legendary Thunder God Titan that were already on the construction list, Grimm felt a headache coming on. He had a feeling that all his assets would be destroyed by these weak goblins in one go. However, the Golem Dragon was only a preliminary test product. He wanted to accumulate some experience in building the real killing machines in the future. Among the large magic machines, Grimm was naturally most interested in the patrol mothership and the Thunder God Titan. No matter how strong the Golem Dragon was, its basic strength was enough to fight a rank 4 creature. However, it was too clumsy and could not fly. If the rank 4 enemy was too cunning and used these weaknesses to play guerrilla warfare, the Golem Dragon might not be able to withstand it. This was evident from the fact that the rank 4 Witch of Death, Thuna, could defeat a rank 4 giant dragon by herself. Therefore, in Grimm's mind, even if the future Golem Dragon was successfully built, it could only be considered as the lowest level, 4 Golem. However, with the Crimson family lacking a rank 4 Magus, it was still a good thing to have a rank 4 magic machine. The only thing that mattered now was whether it was worth it. Grimm finally stopped and turned around to look at the old goblin who was following him too closely and almost crashed into him. My name is Ganga, the current dean of the Goblin Empire's Royal Engineer Academy. I'm also the supervisor of the construction of this golem dragon. You seem to have mentioned too many difficulties and technical problems. I don't want to hear that now. I'm only concerned about what will you give me in return if I provide you with a large magic furnace of sufficient power? Grim placed his hands behind his back and raised his eyebrows, looking arrogant. Hearing Grim's words, the goblins gathered around him held their breaths. The goblins here were at least high-ranked engineers. They had participated in the entire process of building the golem dragon, so they naturally knew the value of a large magic furnace. In the past, they had complained countless times to the wizards stationed here about the lack of apprentices, lack of funds, and constant injuries. However, the thing that bothered them the most was the lack of a strong heart that could drive the golem dragon. Countless complaints, countless requests, and countless expectations. Every time they were rejected by the wizards stationed here, they did not even have a reason to explain. This undoubtedly made the goblin engineers anxious and restless. They thought that such a large construction project would go down the drain just like that. However, today was the first time they heard news of a large magic furnace from the Crimson family's master. How could they not be excited? A powerful Grade 4 golem dragon. Dean Ganga stretched his neck and shouted, "Grade 4? It's a Grade 4. It will definitely be able to wipe out all Grade 4 enemies for you." Seeing the old goblin shouting himself hoarse and spitting saliva everywhere, Grim could not help but snicker in his heart. Grade 4. These goblins who were used to being tigers would not be able to imagine how terrifying a real Grade 4 creature was. Did they think that those Grade 4 magi would be like those stupid warriors who would raise their battle axes and fight with the golem dragon? The power of a real Grade 4 magus had already exceeded the limits of mortals' imagination. And they definitely had a lot of ways to deal with these clumsy and slow creatures. So what if they were big? So what if they had a sturdy shell made of magic metals? If they met a real Grade 4 magus, they would only become a pitiful and miserable wooden dummy. It was not a problem for them to defeat the golem dragon. The only problem was whether they were willing to pay the huge price of cutting down a sturdy wooden dummy. That was why Grim was not tempted by the old goblin's fanatical propaganda. Instead, he had a more accurate and deeper understanding of the golem dragon than the old goblin. A Grade 4 golem? Good, very good. Grim did not burst Ganga's bubble of idealism. Instead, he changed his tone. So, what other difficulties do you have to achieve this goal? Ganga hesitated for a moment. Even with the current strength of the floating mech city, they would need to go all out to create such a terrifying golem dragon. Not to mention the technology and workers, there were more than 100 goblin transport teams that transported the iron ingot. Every day, they shuttled back and forth between the mines and transported the ores they collected to the floating mech city. The ores would then be processed by the various smelting factories, refineries, and purification workshops before finally being delivered to the hands of the goblin technicians. The subsequent smelting and forging of the magic alloys were done in the small goblin laboratories, and the daily output was only a few hundred kilograms. In order to gather enough magic alloys for the golem dragon, nearly 1,000 goblin engineers and technicians had to work day and night. Just the number of goblins that died of exhaustion in the laboratories and operating tables had already reached 100. The reason why they worked so hard was because they wanted to witness the birth of a god-tier golem dragon with their own hands. For some of the native creatures that could not step out of the plane due to the restrictions of their race, Grade 4 was indeed the highest level in the plane. It was worthy of being called a god. It was because the goblins had sacrificed so much that Ganga was worried that the young human wizard would be scared away by the difficulty he posed. We can solve the other problems ourselves. However, there are 3 problems that we cannot solve with our strength alone. Speak. The first is the problem of apprentices. Although the Lord Wizard has sent us 5 apprentices, under their guidance, we can also carry out some rune etching work. However, there are too few goblins that have mastered this technique. At the very least, the number of apprentices we have is far from enough to carve all the rune circuits and spell formations in the golem dragon. Grim pondered for a moment and quickly obtained some internal information from the AI chip. He then gave the old goblin a resolute reply. From the day after tomorrow, I will send you another 100 apprentices from the family. The number of magi will also increase, and they will work with you. Chapter 895. Secondly, we are in urgent need of various gems. You should know that in the Goblin Plane, there are very few magic gems that are produced along with metal mines. Even if we manage to collect some, the quality is usually very low. So, hearing Ganga's complaints, Grim muttered to himself. He knew all of this as Gargamel and Merrill had reported it to him before. However, considering that the Goblin Plane was not the main focus of the Crimson family, the Goblin faction with the Mech City at its core had undoubtedly received the least amount of Magus resources. Now, with the abundance of Kira's alloy, the Goblin faction would undoubtedly rise to the same level as the Magi faction and the Vampires faction. It was only right to allocate some resources to them. Having made up his mind, Grim made a promise without hesitation. From now on, the Mech City will start counting the number of goblins that have the status of a high-grade technician or engineer. Their basic treatment will be the same as that of an acolyte. Those that are selected to join the Magic Energy team will be treated the same as official magi. You go and improve the plans for a few main magic equipment and give me a list of resources. I will inform Gargamel to prioritize the resources here. This. Old Goblin Ganga could not help but sob as he spoke. In the past, the goblins had always been a vassal of the Crimson family. Apart from Duke Tigula and the sage Cabby who could speak up for them, they did not have any say in most of the family matters. Now, the head of the Crimson family had personally promised to give high-grade goblins the same status as magi and acolytes. How could the old goblin not cry tears of joy? All right, calm down. Grim interrupted Ganga's crying and frowned. You said there were 3 problems, what is the last one? Ganga quickly wiped away his tears and flung the green fur on his head behind him. He said in high spirits, I still want to ask the head of the family for a little Kira's alloy. This special magic metal is the key material for our spatial furnace or magic furnace. I want to organize a group of goblins to research Kira's alloy and see if we can find a similar substitute. That way, your development will no longer be limited by the amount of Kira's alloy. Grim looked at the old goblin and the group of green-skinned goblins in surprise. They were not even as tall as his waist, but their arrogant tone made Grim look at them in a new light. With regards to the special effects of the Kalos alloy, Grim had long since understood it clearly through the AI chip. It would be very difficult to refine a similar magic alloy in the laboratory through directional modulation. However, the old dwarf's suggestion was indeed far-sighted. Grim pondered for a moment before replying, Kalos alloy is a magical metal. The Goblin Laboratory in the Mech City doesn't have the equipment to analyze and decompose it. Since you have this intention, then put this laboratory in the White Tower. You can choose a group of experienced engineers to be stationed in the White Tower. I can allocate a special alchemy laboratory for you there. The gnomes cheered loudly. Only the Wind Wizard Decella, who was following behind Grim, smiled faintly, clearly understanding Grim's intentions. For a long time to come, the Kalos alloy would become the most important Magus resource for the Crimson family. Many of the family's core work revolved around the Kalos alloy. Under such circumstances, as the leader of the Crimson family, how could Grim hand over such an important resource like the Kalos alloy to a group of gnomes whose credibility and loyalty could not be guaranteed? The reason why Grimm had set up this laboratory in the Magus world's White Tower was because he wanted to place this group of high-level gnomes under the watchful eye of the family. This way, even if they produced some results, it would quickly fall into the hands of the Crimson family. This was to prevent them from holding on to important weapons that could be used to threaten the higher-ups of the family. Hence, Grimm's words sounded like he was thinking for the gnomes, but in reality, he had already laid a wedge in the future development of the gnomes. Of course, this was not considered a conspiracy, but an open and above-board one. With the simple and straightforward minds of the gnomes, they naturally could not think of the deeper meaning behind each order. Instead, they were excited by the beautiful future that Grimm had promised them. After solving some of the practical problems of the gnomes, Grimm was about to leave the gnome plane when he received a request from the gnome princess Vanessa. He could not help but stop in his tracks. Grimm received Vanessa in a hall on the upper level of the Magus Tower. It had been a while since they last met, and Princess Vanessa's appearance had changed drastically again. There were also some strange, spiritual ripples on her body. Looking at the trend, looking at the development, Grimm was slightly stunned. Was she planning to walk the path of a mechanical wizard? As expected, some of the books that Grimm had sent back had piqued Princess Vanessa's interest. With her current condition, it seemed like the path of a mechanical wizard was the only choice. It might not be a problem for a human's soul to be temporarily attached to an alchemy puppet, but as time went on, there would be problems. Without the nourishment of flesh and life force, Princess Vanessa's soul would only become weaker and weaker. If she did not want to be reincarnated into an undead creature, it was only a matter of time before her soul deteriorated. If she could successfully advance using the path of a mechanical wizard, she would at least be able to maintain the nourishment of witchcraft energy on her soul, and get rid of the awkward situation of being neither human nor puppet. However, it was not suitable to walk the path of a mechanical wizard in the gnome plane, which was a place with weak magic. Hence, Vanessa wanted to ask Grimm for permission to enter the White Tower for further training. Grimm thought about it and secretly consulted Dicella before agreeing to Vanessa's request. There were already a few gnomes in the White Tower who had crossed the threshold to become a wizard, and had become official wizards recognized by the Crimson family. As long as they could prevent them from forming a small faction, there would not be any problems. Merrill was in charge of the White Tower, and a few gnome wizards could still be suppressed. Hence, Grimm was not worried about that. After seeing Princess Vanessa leave in high spirits, Grimm communicated with the wizard stationed in the gnome plane, Dicella. He confirmed that the governance of the gnome plane was stable, and there were no major problems. After making sure that he knew what was going on, Grimm decided to head to the Wizard World's Tower of Destiny. There, the battle between the Witches of Destiny and the Winter Witches had just ended. Alice had urged him several times to attend the Witches of Destiny's celebratory banquet. However, just as he arrived at the top of the Wizard's Tower and was about to use the teleportation formation to return to the Wizard World, a white light flashed in the teleportation formation. A moment later, a heavy and bloated body appeared before him. It was Jellu, the brain monster Gaz Ruvy's sub-brain Jellu. Grimm could not help but be stunned when he saw the wriggling octopus-like brain in the middle of the 5-meter-tall giant metal body. "What are you doing in the gnome plane?" Grimm could not be blamed for being surprised. After all, the sub-brain Jellu was the only clone of the brain monster, and could almost represent the brain monster. When the lance plane was expanding its space, it should be the busiest time for the sub-brain Jellu. How did it get the chance to come to the gnome plane? When the sub-brain Jellu saw Grimm, the octopus-like brain immediately squeezed out a human-like smile. "Sir, I've come to the gnome plane to invite you." "Invite me?" Grimm was even more stunned. "Yes. I heard that you've been busy in the gnome plane for half a day. My main body has many things to say to you. That's why I've been sent here to welcome you." Looking at the obsequious smile on the octopus-like brain, Grimm vaguely understood what was going on. Looks like it's the Kalos alloy again. This brain monster's nose and ears are quite sharp. He had not even told Gargamel about the Kalos alloy he had just obtained. He had only revealed a bit of information in the gnome plane, and the brain monster had already heard about it in the lance plane. This intelligence work is quite good. Grim smiled and said calmly, "Then let's go. I also want to see how the lance plane is developing." After saying this, the sub-brain Jellu did not linger in the gnome plane. He directly teleported with Grim to the lance plane's eternal capital. Lance plane, the eternal capital. Once again exiting the teleportation circle, Grim was led by the cloned brain, Jellu, through the air corridors and steel towers. Following the spiral staircase, they walked for more than an hour before arriving at the core hall of the steel tower where the brain monster was hiding. It had only been a few days since they last met, but the number of Grade 2 magical warriors near the core hall had increased. However, compared to the official Grade 2 Tigula, the magical warriors created by the brain monster could only display Grade 2 strength when they were within its control. Once they left the steel tower, without the brain monster's continuous supply of mana, their strength would probably fall below Grade 2. It could not be helped. The brain monster did not have enough Kalos alloy to create mana cores for them one by one. Therefore, they could only hide in the steel tower and act as the brain monster and Jellu's personal guards, suppressing the natives of the lance plane living in the eternal capital. As soon as Grim stepped into the core hall, the brain monster Gaz Ruvi's vast spiritual will was focused on him. Chapter 896. Tell me, what business do you have with me this time? Grim asked impatiently. My lord, I heard that you promised to give them a batch of Kaira's alloy in the goblin plane? The air in the steel hall vibrated slightly. In order to accommodate Grim, Gazruvi could only use his spiritual force to vibrate the air to speak. You're quite well informed. Grim smiled faintly. I haven't even warmed up my words in the goblin plane, but you've already smelled it in the lance plane. Of course. After all, the goblin plane used to be my homeland, so I still have some connections there. The brain monster chuckled. I'm warning you, your current focus is on the lance plane. You must guard this forward base to the death. Don't let the dragons chase you out. As for the goblin plane, don't interfere recklessly and affect the family's development. Although the brain monster had been behaving well recently, Grim could not help but want to give it another warning. This brain monster Gazruvi was a fellow that bullied the weak and feared the strong. If he was too lenient with it, it would easily cause a backlash. As for loyalty? Grim was not that stupid to believe in the loyalty of a Grade 3 brain monster. On the surface, he and Gazruvi were subordinates, but in reality, they were more like allies. The mark he had placed on the brain monster's soul could have been erased long ago with its strength. If not for the fact that Grim had some backup plans in the super magical furnace, and that the brain monster did not have the confidence to withstand the backlash from the Crimson family, Gazruvi would have long since broken free from Grim's soul shackles and lived his own life. Therefore, Grim had to be extremely careful when dealing with this Grade 3 brain monster that was flying higher and higher, and was in danger of breaking free from the kite string. Understood. My lord, don't worry, the dragons have already tried many times. Although they can heavily damage my eternal capital, it's a delusion if they want to uproot this place. If they dare to come again, I'll make them regret it. That's good, my lord. You see, the development of the eternal capital has reached a bottleneck. In the short term, those dragons won't be able to break in, and we won't be able to break out either. The crux of the problem lies in the Kalos alloy. Do you want to transfer some Kalos alloy to the eternal capital? The brain monster carefully probed. Grim smiled coldly and said, Those goblins promised to forge me a Tier 4 puppet dragon within a year or two. That's why I gritted my teeth and gave them the Kaira's alloy. What about you? What can you bring me? Don't tell me you're planning to take away my treasure with empty promises? Although Grimm's tone was not friendly, the brain monster's heart was suddenly excited. It was really scared, as Grimm only had a little stock. In that case, no matter what he said, he wouldn't be able to snatch the batch of Kellis alloy from the goblin camp. After all, the value of a Tier 4 puppet dragon was shockingly high, and it could not afford such a huge sum of money. Sir, I can provide you with another 1,000 demonic mechanical core. I don't need the demonic mechanical core for the time being. The Crimson family's development is still stable, and there's no urgent pressure for war. You should use the demonic mechanical core yourself. My lord, I can attack the dragon lords for you. Yes, with the demonic mechanical core you have now, it won't be a problem to take down a few dragon lords. But Grimm could not help but smile. How many dragons can you capture for me? The brain monster Gaz-Lu was embarrassed and fell into silence. It could not be helped, this was the weakness of its strength. The demonic mechanical core, which numbered in the tens of thousands, was like a torrent of steel, enough to flatten the territory and nest of any dragon lord below grade 4. However, in order to capture the giant dragon, the brain monster, Gaz-Ruvi, was powerless and helpless. Although it was grade 3, it was not good at fighting. Even though it had the psionic ability as a weapon, it was not willing to step into the battlefield due to its fear of death. The many subordinates it had created could not control the sky. But which dragon in Lance didn't know how to fly? Seeing that the demonic mechanical core was unstoppable, the dragons would not hide in their nests and wait for death. Before the demonic mechanical core could rush into its nest, it had already packed its bags and fled. Therefore, it was easy for the demonic mechanical core to defeat the dragon lords, but it was wishful thinking to capture the dragons that flew high in the sky. If Grimm was willing to provide some magic furnace for the brain monster to build a batch of floating warships, this problem would be solved. Therefore, even though it was embarrassing, the brain monster Gaz-Lu could not help but want to obtain some Kalos alloy in advance. Seeing the brain monster remain silent, Grimm could not help but change the topic. What about Arms the Thunder Dragon? What has he been doing these days? The one who answered this question was the cloned brain Jello. Lord Arms has occupied a vast territory 300 kilometers away from the southwest corner of the Eternal Capital. He's living a good life there. That female dragon is sleeping with it again. Yes, tell him to be careful. I'm afraid most of the dragon lords in the Lance Plain already know about his relationship with us. Be careful not to let the dragons trick him into a trap. Grimm frowned. I will make sure Lord Arm's territory is safe. The cloned brain Jello still had a fawning expression. My lord, I heard that you already have territories in the central and northern parts of the Magus continent, and are currently lacking a large aerial force. Why don't I help you build an invincible aerial fleet? What do you mean? Grimm's interest was piqued. The Eternal Capital does not lack large amounts of metal, but we do lack magic furnaces. As long as you give us 2 magic furnaces, we will help you build a cruising mothership for free. Don't forget that the blueprints of those goblins' magical equipment were all from my body's predecessor. The brain monster Gaz-Lu remained silent, as if tacitly agreeing to Jello's suggestion. Grimm could not help but squint his eyes. I'll give you 2 magic furnaces. Keep one for your own use, and build a cruising mothership for me. Is that what you mean? Yes. Heh, this suggestion sounds good. But those goblins seem to be able to do it. Besides, if I give them 2 magic furnaces, they'll repay me with 2 cruising motherships. The cloned brain Jello's octopus-like brain secretly communicated with the main body. Without hesitation, the cloned brain Jello raised his offer. 2 magic furnaces, and we'll build a cruising mothership for you. We'll also give you a magic army of 300 people, all of which I guarantee will be top-grade goods. I'll give you 3 magic furnaces, and you'll build 2 cruising motherships for me, along with a magic army of 500 people. This, Furthermore, the cruising mothership you build will have to obey the family's orders when needed. However, if there's any damage, the family will compensate in full. The cloned brain Jellu and the main body discussed in silence for a long time, and finally, reluctantly, agreed. In fact, this was only one of the brain monster's strategies. It sounded like such a deal would require the brain monster to take out a lot of goods, but in reality, it would not hurt its vitality at all. What did the brain monster lose in building the cruising motherships and magic army? Just some magic alloys and time. Magic alloys could be found in metal veins and lance, and the factories and magic energy used to build them were all the brain monster's own. As long as it was given time and energy, it could have as many of these things as it wanted. Hence, even though Grimm's conditions were so harsh, the brain monster still felt that it was worth it. Then, my lord, how many magic furnaces do you plan to give us first? The cloned brain Jellu could not help but probe Grimm's background. Let's go with the standard of 6 magic furnaces for now. When you let me see 4 cruising motherships, I'll give you 6 magic furnaces. The cloned brain Jellu could not help but be ecstatic. 6 cruising motherships. This was not a difficult task for the Eternal Capital, and it would probably take at most a month or so to successfully build them. However, this meant that the metal storage of the Eternal Capital was a little tight. It seemed that he had to hurry up and send out prospecting teams to find all the metal veins near the Eternal Capital as soon as possible. They quickly came to an agreement, and both sides ended up happy. Grimm did not stay in the Eternal Capital for long, and turned to step into the teleportation formation to return to the Magus world. Magus world, Tower of Destiny. As the dazzling white light of the teleportation formation gradually faded, Grimm saw Alice, who had come to welcome him. Behind her were the Berserk Witch Sophia and another newly promoted Witch of Destiny. They had not seen each other for a long time, and Alice looked a little haggard, but she seemed to be in a good state of mind. How was it? I heard that you used up a lot of destiny energy in this battle. Did you hurt your soul? Grimm took a few steps out of the teleportation formation and grabbed Alice's waist. Although they were already intimate, Alice was still not used to Grimm being intimate with her in public. The moment Grimm's warm hand touched her waist, Alice blushed and rolled her eyes at him, but she did not push his mischievous hand away. It's been a few days since we won, and you're only willing to come after so many times. Humph, it seems that I have no place in your heart. Alice could not help but grumble. Don't change the subject. Tell me, how much destiny energy did you use up in this battle? Grimm asked again in a low voice. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.